You said the world needs power, I won't disagree. There's heat in the ground and the wind runs free. You call nuclear the future, but it won't power itself. Nuclear relies on... You said the world needs power, I won't disagree. There's heat in the ground and the wind runs free.
That kind of backfired on me today. Hello everybody, I'm here somewhere. Oh, that can't be it. Oh, I had the show opened. We're off to a bit of a rough start today, are we? Yay! That's great, sure, actually. Change of routine. I have a countdown, as you know, on my page, the video that you're watching, right? And sometimes when I'm going live, I'll have that on the external computer, which is running YouTube, right? That's all it really does in the comments. So when I bring the comments up, that's what you're looking at, the external HDMI. And so I had James's song opened, but I had left the window, which is really unusual for me to leave that window. That's once a year, though, I managed to do it. Hi, everybody. Apologies. Such is life. I'm going to play it probably again at the end of the show. I like it so much. We see here a little bit of a wrench into my routine. Going backwards. I'm Dana. You can call in 709-589-4406. I might as well leave the headphones up here because we're going to be doing a video. On Stanford University. You know, one of the biggest shakers and movers on the entire planet. On June the 8th, 2011, they came out with a response to Fukushima, Japan, and the future of nuclear energy. And I laugh because it's surprising it took them a few months to come out with a response, right? So we just done a video on MIT, and yesterday's video on Harvard University's responses. So we're going to cover a video. We're doing the show early because these are complicated shows. You don't want to take an academic and smear their name unless it's warranted, right? So and my assertions, unlike theirs, I'm going to provide the documentation. They don't provide documentation, but I believe strongly in that because there's so many people that does it to me. So June 8, 2011, Burton Richter. We got Matthew Wald, who used to be with the Nuclear Energy Institute. We've covered hundreds and hundreds of times. In 2014, was it, or something, he joined the Nuclear Energy Institute. He's currently somehow or another connected to, what's his name, the booking, is it? The Booking Institute? I can't even remember, thank goodness. Michael Schellenberg and the other Yahoo set up. This is a pro-nuclear think tank disguised as something else, right? Here we go. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Adjust the volume, Dana. Oh, yeah, I know. I was going to chop it up and get a lot of stuff get the preamble kind of done. I decided to scrap it all, and we'll do it in real time. Let's do it in real time. What's his name on Fox News that time? Bill O'Reilly, was it? Smurf it, I'm going to do it in real time. No rehearsal.
We're very, very lucky today to have two.
We're very, very, very lucky. Not very lucky, but not very, very lucky, but very, very, very lucky to have the best lawyers at Why would you put, like, this is Stanford University for the environment, the Institute for the Environment at Stanford University. Instead, they bring in just a everyday reporter who's happened to be pro-nuclear. Now, we've covered this 12, 13 years ago. Went through the whole bloody thing. And YouTube took my site with 25,000 subscribers and a couple of thousand presentations like this down, and my research expeditions for 6 years. Took it all down when I was on the east coast of Canada researching spiders. Because they're missing. 500,000 per acre in the woods is missing. They can't tie on to the trees and bushes anymore because Fukushima radioactive fallout was uptake by all the plants. Right? We've seen the same effect after Chernobyl, but now we're seeing it on a planetary scale. When you hear me laughing, it's typically the gallows laugh. It's an involuntary type of laugh to the horror.
Real experts on this topic.
Real experts. Well, Matthew Wald's not a nuclear scientist. Stanford don't have any nuclear scientists, or what? Don't have access to any experts. You got to bring in Matthew Wald. He's like a fairy tale creature that shouldn't exist.
The first is Matthew Wald from the New York Times.
Bad fairy tale.
Matthew has been writing about energy topics for 30 years.
So what?
He's been in the paper's Washington Bureau.
Whoopie-doo. Who would you rather hear from, a reporter who writes a couple of paragraphs here or there, or an academic who works at it all day, every day of his life in the nuclear industry? Who's more appropriate is the real question, right? Stanford. Bless your missing hearts.
Since 1995, and is currently assigned to write about the environment and energy.
He's going to write a couple of paragraphs about environment and energy, folks. We should worship him. We should get on our knees and grovel every time he walks past us.
He's been particularly interested in civilian nuclear power since the 3 Mile accident. And
since the 3 Mile accident. Because he was in the New York Times or something, so he had a big audience where he would write his few paragraphs and say, I'm God, you're just a dweeb because you're reading this. Nuclear, good, you stupid.
Has toured more than 24 nuclear power reactors. And
so what? Who would you rather have at Fukushima, Stanford University's response to 36 reactor cores and 8 fuel pools at the top of 4 buildings melting down? A reporter who has a legacy of protecting the nuclear industry? Or an academic who works in the industry? Most likely neither one is trustworthy.
Researchers, reactors, as well as...
I'm just like, why is Matthew Wald of all people on this planet, replacing academics and scientists at Stanford University. And you see the picture, the thumbnail. Thumbnail was the audience.
The Yucca Mountain site, which was, of course, as many of you know, was recently the candidate for the U.S. waste disposal for civilian radioactive wastes.
Right, they canceled that because the criteria for Yucca Mountain, like first off, they had to cancel because its earthquake fault lines turned out to be there and got active. But they spent $20 billion on litigation, by the way. $20 billion. And the criteria for the mountain was how much heat can it hold for 200 years. It's pretty interesting, isn't it? And so it was no way it can hold a significant amount that was necessary. And so the geniuses wanted to fill Yucca Mountain up with air conditioners. Then the question is, what happens when you lose power from a solar event or something or an accident?
So that will be our first speaker, but now I would also like to introduce our second speaker, our own Burton Richter, who is the Paul Pigot Professor in Physical Sciences at Stanford, and of course the Director of Emeritus of the Stanford Linear Accelerator. We all know him as one of our real energy experts, and he just wrote a fantastic book called Beyond Smoke and Mirrors.
Yeah, he says that Fukushima wasn't so bad. Where's your nuclear experts, Tom? That's the biggest question. That's the most frightening question. Is the university's job is not to protect you, it's to protect a couple of corporations or industries. And we see this is just blatant.
About all of these topics, and he's deeply
fun,
knowledgeable about nuclear power and has thought deeply about its future and including its important role.
And there's nothing fast about these shows. We're just going to take our time and meander into it. There's so many details. A lot of sentences you're going to have to stop at 3 or 4 times in a sentence to correct a lie that they're going to tell you, because I have to show you the documentation to prove that they're being deceptive and dishonest and deceitful and disingenuous.
In dealing with the climate change issue. So with that, I would like...
Climate change, which is caused by 80 years of releases from nuclear fuel pools and reactors and dumping.
To get...
Because the radiation never goes away. It's pulsing energy at the speed of light, every single atom. This is insane. Like cesium-137 pulses 600 feet every second. Energy. Like a single atom. If 2 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't see it. So a single atom with those particular attributes is absurd. It's absurd. Because you're talking about full body x-rays for birds and insects and mammals and animals and kids, humans, everything. It's just absurd. The biota. I'll settle down.
On with things. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to break it into 2 parts. First, we'll talk about just the facts. What happened in Japan?
Just the facts. What happened? Once you get past the words of the earthquake and tsunami, that's when the fun begins. It's really crazy because like we've done this over 12, 13 years ago or something. And here we are again.
And first, Matthew will give some perspectives and information about what happened, and then Burton Richter will follow up with that. We'll then switch to the second topic of what does it mean for the future of nuclear power.
What does it mean for the future of the emaciated whales, the emaciated birds, the emaciated sea lions? When you go down to the coastline now to see birds and whales, that's what you're looking at. That's not insane. What actually is emaciated? Everything's emaciated or missing.
And Bert will first talk about some of the international issues around that, and then we'll bring it back home to the United States where Matthew will address those issues. So with that, please join me in welcoming both of our speakers today for this very important event. So thank you.
Why is it important?
Thank you, and I hope you can hear me or you'll trip.
Ew, here we go again. We're stuck with Matthew Wald again. I know everybody hates me now. Like, Dana, you bastard. You already done this to us 12 years ago. You heartless frigger. There you go, take that. I'll turn the volume down next time, but that one's for you, who said that, Dana, you hurt me.
And wave your arms if you can. I would.
It's very young to have a receding hairline that big, eh? Now, Matthew Wald shouldn't exist at Stanford University talking about a complicated subject like nuclear meltdowns. That's just cruel, man. Why would you bring that guy there? And you heard the audience, like a bunch of sea lions clapping. Ooh, they're all in on it. This is all structured. This is, as you'll see, and I'll provide the documentations from my assertions as we're going through this. Unlike them,
Let's start with a brief L.
Really, and you're the best of the best. You're like Stanford. And that's the audio you're going to give us? You couldn't bring them in on a phone, so we got real audio? Phones didn't exist back then or something? And you got the best of the best for cameras and everything else and TVs, and you're producing the thinkers and the movers and the shakers, and you couldn't bring in a few more experts to do the audio, but you're Stanford, so the world should worship.
We keep hearing about melting nuclear fuel. Well, for years the industry.
So he's holding up a little card that explains how a nuclear reactor produces electricity. It's like, have you ever go on vacation, you see people out on the side of the road in clown suits or whatever with menus of a restaurant alongside of it trying to get you to go in there?
Like to give away these little card reactors, simulated nuclear fuel pellet.
It's like you're watching a 7-year-old, isn't it? It's bizarre. This is what Stanford is going to bring us to educate us, to get us all hypnotized with the facts, the important facts.
I think it would be uranium dioxide ceramic, and on the back it says that, rather on the front, it says that this is the energy equivalent of. It
says pick up milk before you come home.
3 barrels of oil, a ton of coal, or 17,000 cubic feet of natural gas.
So he's talking about a little pellet is equal to 17,000 cubic feet of natural gas. But have you seen the disaster they leave behind to get their little gram? Just hang on a second, because that's kind of important. Seems he brought it up. He started this fight. Don't blame me. I just want those who don't know any better or conveniently are able to forget what it takes to get a gram, which is equal to 17,000 cubic feet of gas. That's amazing. Oh my goodness. You guys are so smart. M-A-R-T, smart. Stop frigging around, Dana. Yeah, I know. I'll get there. I can do this. There's 2 facets to this story. Here comes the first one, I swear. Let's do this one because it's pretty. So in order to get that gram, this is part of the nightmare. Now the pollution from that is maybe 1/10,000th of the pollution from the natural gas to get their gram, right? And then the leftover stuff from their production, so they talk about how coal, oil and gas production is created, right? 500,000 tons of sulfur from coal is left over, 300,000 tons from oil, 200,000 tons from natural gas. In a contrast, a megawatt nuclear reactor produces no poisonous gas or pollutions, they say. But that's not true, because that's what he was just selling you. That every facet of that process, there's so many things going on there, the average person can't wrap their mind around it. So just hang on one more second. It's the whole story is insane. Every time they come out and claim that they have some kind of redeeming qualities, the nuclear is the holy grail, or right? Here we go. And then we'll move on back to the video. I just wanted to show you, like, the mines are the biggest mines you'll ever see because they get such a small return. And so their tailings have destroyed endless communities. It's not the one, this one right here. Here. This is what happens to the drinking water in order to get their hands on a little pellet of uranium. For years they used to just dump millions and millions of tons directly into the ocean, buried it in the ground. I mean, they're vicious, what they've done for 30 years to the ocean. And you know, you got abandoned communities when something breaks down forever.
And the reactor, it sits in a long, thin metal tube of zirconium alloy. The gathered into bubbles and will sit immersed in water or steam. Nothing. Item 2 is the instant nuclear plant. Arriva wants to build a chain of these in the United States, in Olkiluoto, Finland, and it's like a kid's pop-up. You open it up and
Look, listen to the audience. They're just loving it. They're so proud of Matthew Wald. It's like a little pop-up for kids. It's some sick shit when you start targeting kids to manipulate them into thinking that the little gram, they don't show you the process. Like, you got to open mines, then they leave a chemical pond there because you have to separate it with chemicals. And that pollutes the environment for thousands of years. When they finally evaporate the water and the stuff that's left over, they poison entire communities. They built the houses on top of this stuff. The crusher, the ball mill, you got the insane amount of water, acid, the leaching tanks, which are eventually released into the environment. Thickeners, sand filters, solvent extractors, uranium precipitation tanks. This is just to get to the yellow stuff that you're going to send somewhere else and is ultimately going to poison the water. And all these communities, you can't drink the water because Matthew Wald has his little pop-up.
the real thing costs probably $10 billion and takes many years to build, but this one's quicker. I also brought along, we hear that the Japanese do recycling, the French do it too. I mean,
I didn't create the video, don't blame me. I know you're not, but I'm just saying. Surely Stanford University could have put him on a telephone and then married it up to the picture. His mouth is out of sync anyway. She said, "Hey, Matthew, we're going to call you on the phone. We're Stanford." And they're using a TriCaster to do this too, right? A $50,000 TriCaster. The best of everything. They actually could re-engineer his audio as it's coming through to the microphone. Right? The equipment was available back then to do that. They could have cleaned it all up. They could have cleaned the picture up.
Well, they chop it up. They retrieve the unused uranium, although they actually use it. They also retrieve the plutonium that was created in reactor operations, and they take the remaining in a very strong
And so you're only getting like half a sentence. It gets better.
form of glass, borosilicate glass. This particular came from a military facility in South Carolina, the defense processing facility, which is leftover bomb wastes, quite similar to civilian wastes, and the cesium and the other isotopes, and then you wait to put them in, and then you wait some more, and then you wait some more.
So what he's doing is he's pretending he got high level waste and he's going to hold it in his hand and it's perfectly safe. To the idiots at home that don't understand that what he's doing is completely deceptive.
And I got one other artifact to show you, which is I bought these things 20 years ago. It's a
It gets better because you also got the questions audience. So the idea is just pure propaganda, and broken mic is good for when you got a buffoon, right?
It counts gamma radiation. You put the button and it lights up and it tells you how many milliroentgen you've got. And
you shouldn't be counting milliroentgens. You should be counting in physical atoms, Becquerels, atomic decays, the physical atom, uranium, plutonium, americium, neptunium. He can only read gammas. You got alphas, betas, and neutrons, and X-rays.
It chirps like a little smoke alarm.
Chirp!
A couple of weeks ago, I was going back over the instructions for these things because we should.
Maybe it's a good thing his audio keeps cutting out, eh? Well, that's the best Stanford can do. Yeah, they're a university, but it doesn't mean they're smart. M-A-R-T.
And it said that the device was about the size of a beeper. And I realized most people didn't remember what a beeper was like, but if we go another 20 years, we use it. What am I going to compare this to? A pack of cigarettes? What?
A pack of cigarettes. Because one of their favorite versions is they'd like to compare cigarette is worse than radiation from a nuclear accident. Dirty little bugger, right?
What physical object can I put in writing that will still be able to recognize?
Oh, he's having a good time. Look at him.
10 years from now, 20 years from now. Anyway, if we can go to the first slide.
Because he got to use the words cigarette, right? The industry loves to conflate natural stuff with man-made. It's unbelievably dishonest.
I'm going to talk through how Fukushima is supposed to work, what's happening to it now.
Perfect. Let me chop it off here so that we can... Man.
And what happens next. And I can't see from the camera is now. Do we have the first slide on the screen? Here we go. Okay. So this is.
So yeah, I think this one it's unbelievable grainy. But this is a tsunami coming in and hitting the coastline. You'll see it rising straight up in the air like a spray.
A short video that was taken by a plant employee on his cell phone, and it was the wave coming in. We've survived the earthquake, and here comes the wave. And we can go ahead and play that. It's very short. Well, that's short.
15-meter wave hits Fukushima.
The height of this wave has varied depending on when you heard about it, but...
yeah, it was 140 feet in one place.
Here we go.
There it is. You can see the wave breaching. Like, where it hit the coastline, it went up a couple of hundred feet.
Tokyo Electric
Like it's coming in at 500 miles per hour, right?
Power got out there. You see that spurt? That's the wave hitting the front of the building and spurting up into the air. And they looked at where the waterworks were.
So it's way higher than the building. Now, just let me touch on that for 1 second. I'll show you the video of it going through the site. So this is what it looked like going through the site. That's more context. Now, they had a couple of months, right? This is almost, April, May, June. That's 3 months. March to April, May, June. Yeah, it's almost 3 full months because June the 9th or something. Is it June the 8th? We'll get there. So let me check the date again. Yeah, June the 8th. Let me get rid of that.
And this plant was not designed for that. No plant was designed for that. Maybe it should have been designed for that, but it...
Yeah, it should be because, they got a 3,000-year legacy of tsunamis up to 300 feet high. And they got a 3,000-year record of earthquakes, significant earthquakes. They're less than 100 kilometers from the tectonic plates. 50, 60, basically. And they have 1,000 earthquakes a year. So they knew this was going to happen at some point. They had no illusions that at some point, if you put all the reactor cores at the top of the buildings, when the tsunami that they know is going to come in, you're not going to be able to have any control. And same thing with the common spent fuel pool. They built it on the same street as the reactors, right alongside the reactors. So when you get huge temperatures and events, once one of them explodes, you can't go and rescue the rest of them, so they're going to explode. It wasn't an accident, right?
Wasn't. Okay, if we can go to the first PowerPoint slide.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, I can't wait.
Which is Fukushima in times. Maybe we got to play out this whole video. The guys from TEPCO all wear these ugly blue lab coats. I think they'd be more beautiful if they straight to.
You can't understand. He's trying to make a joke, but I don't know what he was saying. We do it one more time. I'll pay attention. I'll shut up and pay attention.
And this was not designed for that. No plant was designed for that. Maybe it should have been designed for that, but it wasn't.
Can we cut that out so that if I got to replay it, it won't be as painful?
Okay, if we can go to the first PowerPoint slide.
Cut that out. I'm going to have to replay this a couple of times, so I'm going to shorten it up.
Which is Fukushima in times. Maybe we got to play out this whole video. The guys from TEPCO all wear these ugly blue lab coats. I think they'd be more beautiful if they straight to.
Some of the guys in the lab coat. Because it's the details that are important.
Well, let me wait to get that slide up. Let me tell you what we're going to be looking.
That's quite a few jokes he's already told tonight, isn't it? Did you know there was 860,000 extra cancers in the first year? That's wonderful, Dana. Did you know it's not like a banana? People couldn't go back and visit their loved ones at the graveyard without being harmed by radioactive fallout. And you can see 1-ton bags of radioactive fallout in the background. They actually picked up 30 million of them. Hey, Matthew. Hey, Matthew loves telling jokes. Is it because he's a joke? Is it because what they're doing is a big joke? Is Fukushima a joke? Can't go back and visit your loved ones ever. If you do, you're making a mistake because you're going to be consuming this, breathing it in. It's going to sequester in your muscles, your organs, your bones, and destroy your health.
Let me wait to get that slide up. Let me tell you what we're going to be looking at. Fukushima Daiichi, which Fukushima 1, there's a second plant a few kilometers away called Fukushima Daiichi, which is Fukushima 2. Fukushima Daiichi is a complex of reactors of sorted. The Japanese like boiling water reactors relative to the other major technology.
And so they got one of the microphones in the crowd left on. Hear that? People are talking away in the background. Everybody that sat there is, when we get to the questions and answers, you'll see what kind of crazy setup this was to promote nuclear instead of the concern that they pretended they had about the victims.
That uses ordinary water called pressurized water reactors. The light water reactors are very good for you can vary their output up and.
This was brilliant, actually, wasn't it? because, like, it's only 36 reactor cores melting down. It's not important or nothing. And you bring in, of all people, the Stanford University, where the best of the best, the experts, the future of humanity exists. And you bring in
down over the course of the day, which is important if you're going to put 6 in one location.
Should I try to figure out what he's saying when the microphone cuts off? He's like, if you're going to put 6 reactors in one place, let's put it on an earthquake fault line, tectonic plates at that are always active.
Dozen a few miles away, and if you're going to run your whole system on nuclear power, in this country, that seldom gets to be an issue because only 20% of our electricity is from nuclear power. But if the thing can't run out full time, it doesn't.
So he's apologizing something for to promote the nuclear industry. Who cares about the victims?
The most reactors we one spot is 3. That's in one Connecticut and another in Arizona. There's a place in Georgia where we have 2, trying to build 2 more. That would give up. Here we go. So this is Fukushima Daiichi. The square boxes towards the top are.
Whoa. So this is 3 months later, after the reactors have already blown up, and he's showing you pictures before Fukushima. Maybe he'll show us the real pictures, I don't know, but let's not take any chances. So hang on, I'm going to introduce you to the 4 reactors that he's not worried about. To your left is reactor, what was remaining of reactor 4. To your right is some of the media pretending they're at the top of the building in the fuel pool, on a building that doesn't even exist anymore. Here we go. So, like, on the 15th, this picture existed. This was published on the 15th. Shows reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4 in a nuclear meltdown. I thought you'd know that by listening to.
The broader buildings are the turbine buildings, and we'll look at some schematics in a minute. That's where the steam is converted to electricity.
This is not Fukushima. Anyways, he's trying to make a point. Maybe he'll show us something after.
And in the very foreground, you see tanks that probably stored cooling water, and I doubt those survived. We're looking from the ocean land here. And go ahead to the next slide, please.
Oh, he did. Look at that. All right. He didn't tell you what it was.
That's before and after. You see one of the secondary containment systems.
There you go. Now he tells you before and after. That's reactor 2. That's 100% nuclear meltdown. Lost 8 reactor cores in the fuel pool. That's Medusa. That's reactor 3. And so when you consider that this is 3 months later, there's no reason he couldn't have showed you that picture, which is reactor 3. And there's no reason, because it was out there on the 16th of the same month that it happened, or he could have showed you this, all the reactors in a row.
That's before and after. You see one of the secondary containment systems active, going up. You look at turbine hall on the left, and
so he's talking about the containment system.
that's before and after. You see one of the secondary containment systems.
So the secondary containment system, what the hell is he talking about? Like, that's reactor 3 to your left. The fuel pool's reactor cores are at the top of the buildings, so they're actually gone. Let me show you better. Here you go. Just because he's not going to explain it to you, he's going to tell you a different story. But at the top of the buildings are 2 fuel pools, and because they don't have a repository in Japan or anywhere else, Everything is kept at the top of the building. It's the craziest thing imaginable. And the reactor core is at the top of the building. That's reactor 3. And he had access to that picture instead of a grainy one. So the fuel pools and the reactor core is gone. That's 9 reactors. And you know where they're gone? Well, that's reactor 3 shown you. So it would have been appropriate to show you the explosion to your left. And 3 months later, this model is based on 23 days of radioactive fallout. Not model, but a study from the French government at 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air covering the entire planet at day 23. Very, very bad for the nuclear industry. You can't show you that.
You look at turbine hall on the left and you see...
Just over there, these buildings here.
Holes in the roof, and there is debris all over the place. This was needed, everything in its place, and it has been smashed. Nuclear reactors are actually in a hurricane, a cyclone, other kinds of events, because they're class 1 buildings. They're built stuff.
It's like watching old Bruce Lee movies. You fight now? I fight you now. It'll get better, I swear. I promise.
This place has been smashed. Go ahead to the
So like the question and answers, lots of entertainment going on.
next slide. We're going to walk through a series of diagrams here that get increased. Okay.
So, did I link to the video tonight? I don't think I did. To the original video. It's not like me. I'll put it in after. I'm doing the whole video so nobody can accuse me of no context, skipping context for something that's controversy.
Well, this is called a boiling water reactor. It uses ordinary water as the... But coolant is really the wrong word. It's really fluid. The reactor produces heat, steam,
and so the moderators are doing what? Picking their friggin' nose? How come they don't stop it and just give them a call and plug it right into their TriCaster that they're using?
It's called boiling water because you boil the water directly in the core. Take it to a turbine, it's a little propeller, that converts some of the energy of the steam into free power, which turns the generator. The generator makes electricity.
So he's cutting in and out, in and out, in and out. You got people in the background coughing and chattering. Right? It's the furthest thing from a professional. But if you go watch their other presentations and other stuff, you'll find they're perfect.
The steam is actually very valuable water. It's extremely, you don't want to lose that. That has to be converted back into a liquid in order to be heat. You lose about 2/3 of the energy value in converting it back to, and you do.
So you lose 2/3 of nuclear energy value by cooling the water that you had just heated. And what it is, it goes through, each reactor needs 1 million gallons per minute, 4,500 tons of water every 60 seconds. It's equal to 70 plus 1-ton trucks of water driving past your front door every second. Think of 4,500 1-ton pickup trucks driving past your front door every minute for 8 hours a day, and you get a kind of concept of how much energy you need. So 1/3 of that energy that they're producing is lost in trying to cool the water. Very efficient.
Running it over some pipes. On the inside of the pipes, you have cold seawater, and then you pump it back in for another pass. The reactor has fuels, and there are control.
A reactor has a. Then it's university. Then you can't expect them to be very smart. They're learning. No, they're professionals. They're supposed to be the best of the best. They invent the cameras for Gardner Sykes. They invent the students. They create the students that invent the cameras, that invent the microphones, that invent...
That have to come up from the bottom in this design to shut off the reaction when you need to do that. When the reactor shuts down, there are big valves that close over the steam loop, so they keep the reactor bottled up in the containment building.
We're talking about a nuclear meltdown. I know it doesn't sound that way. That's why they got... I guess they got Matthew Wald's deer. It's like if you go to in the old days, you go to the circus, and it'll be like this little alley where you can go down and you see oddities. He would have been in one of them back in the day.
In normal operation, you're letting some of that radiation out, that radioactive material, because the loop has some radioactivity in it. The cooling water is forming actually different functions. It also acts as a moderator, which means it slows down the neutrons as they're emitted in the chain reaction.
Okay, I get it. So that's important for when he tells you that it looks like that on the inside. Not like that, right? You know what I mean? Because he wants you to understand all these nuances that are very difficult even for the average person if they've never been introduced to the topic. We'll see.
And it's optimum speed for putting more more neutrons, more uranium nuclei. And
maybe, no, well, I'm not an expert. I don't know why Stanford got me on here. Thanks, Stanford. Shocking how you missed that one.
The reason that some people like boiling water reactors is liquid water is a very good moderator.
The reason some people don't like boiling water reactors is I want to hear both sides, not just one side.
Steam is not a very good moderator. Change the efficiency here. You want to change the population and do that to the proportion of steam bubbles in the core. And you can do the design.
So it's totally inappropriate what he's doing. Hang on, I'll explain that. You got 4 reactors and 8 fuel pools melted down. Each meltdown was each reactor would have been equal to 100 Chernobyls. You have 3,600 Chernobyls released from the plutonium X oxide fuel. And because Chernobyl was a graphite reactor, it was a new reactor, it didn't have decades of reactor cores at the top of the buildings, it was still horrifying what happened. But it's like a paper towel compared to Fukushima, Chernobyl is. So he's refusing to acknowledge. He showed you a picture of reactor 3 from above shot. The coward.
Go to the next slide, please.
Next slide.
Here's a slightly more complicated view of the same. Here what we have is that upside down light bulb is the containment. That's the thing we think is intact in units 1 and 3.
That's the containment. He said we think 1 to 3rd or 1 to 3 or something. So now he's going to try to explain that they're safe.
Damaged in unit 2. It's bottled up tight, as you can there. It is a lot smaller a containment and thinner containment than a pressurized water reactor. But it's believed to be adequate because it's got a couple of useful... One of them is at the bottom, you see that circuit part, we're looking at it in cross-section. It's called the wetwood torus, and it's half full of water. It's got about 1 million gallons of water in it. It's up with surplus steam when you dump it.
So he's trying to say that the reactors have survived so far because of that particular attribute right there. Huh. Oh. Think about this. Reactor 3 and 4 don't even exist. Let me go find the original picture. Which I probably already got right here, actually. Yeah. So this was, this is like 3-4 weeks later or something. But that's what it would have looked like the next day. Except there would have been a lot of smoke too, right? Not, well, nuclear meltdown type fallout coming out of it. Because you can't, it's like when you have a nuclear meltdown and you see the emissions, it's hard to call it smoke, because if you, like Tarzan, you swing through that smoke, you'll drop dead right out of the sky. Your organs will melt before you even get close to it. Yeah? Get that? So now what he's trying to do, he showed you how a reactor works and giggity pins and everything else. The laughing shaft is connected to the giggling pin stuff. And so now he can come out and say, well, that little thing at the bottom of the torus got 1 million gallons of water, and that's used to cool the reactors. But all of them were gone, and the fuel pools, by day 5, reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's a lot of evidence that needs to be investigated for the common spent fuel pool, which had at least 11 million pounds. Each of these buildings would have had over 6 million pounds, because they have decades of reactor cores at the top of the buildings, right? And reactor 6, pictures released in 2021, the 10-year anniversary in January, though, of that year. 736 pictures. I've done recent presentations a few months ago on that stuff. And I'll show you the documentation for my assertions. You can find it there. Back to the madness.
That worked well at Fukushima until they
That worked well until the tsunami.
had so much surplus steam that the wet well.
Well, I thought he was going to say tsunami. I'm not sure where he's going now.
There is.
So he was saying that worked well at Fukushima. Then I thought he was going to say until the tsunami came in. Instead, he didn't say nothing. He said that worked well for Fukushima.
There are two methods. The primary containment cooling reactor. One is just discussed in the simpler pump.
Thank God we got this from a great institution like Stanford University, where everything is almost perfect. Well, there is no containment. There's no. The reactors were at the top of the buildings. These were 190-foot, 65-meter, 19-story buildings. And each of them had around 9 reactor cores. They're gone. So you're talking about 36 reactor cores.
Off to the, here you can see the main steam.
Till you can prove me wrong, I can prove with documentation that there's around 8 reactor cores and the 2 fuel pools at the top of each of the 4 buildings. Just 36 reactor cores. Because pure uranium, pure plutonium, each reactor, a single reactor is a catastrophic event for the entire planet. Because that's how radioactive fallout works. That's 23 days of radioactive fallout. Gas, oil, and coal emissions don't create plumes like this. There's nothing else on the planet. Think of it as a snowstorm covering the planet in 23 days. And snow never stops coming and it never melts. Then you're on the right path towards appreciating 80 years of emissions from the nuclear industry to fuel pools. Problem with the fuel pools is they're all splitting atoms. The more fuel you put in there, the more atoms it's producing every day. And the numbers are bigger than any definition humans use. Each day is released from 1,000 fuel pools to attack everything with replicating cells.
Off to the, here you can see the main steam line goes to the turbine generators, back through the condenser, and then is pumped back in for another pass. Excuse me.
He didn't need to do that. We couldn't hear him. He can't really hear much he's saying.
The other method is, when you shut down, you're still producing heat. At the moment of shutdown, you're producing about 6% as much heat as you when you were running, because you've got lots and lots of very short.
So normally, you can shut down a reactor main output. You can reduce it significantly, right? But what happened at Fukushima was the tsunami showed up within the hour. And so you had this heat that you couldn't get rid of, so the pressure built. And that excited the chain reaction, because the chain reaction, that's why these reactors are at around 1,000 pounds per square inch, and they're running at 600 or 700 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. It enhances the chain reaction, right? That's why these containers are so thick. Not because they're trying to protect you. It's because they got to contain 1,000 pounds per square inch. And so what happens in an event, a station blackout, where you have no power, you shut down, but the heat kept building because you lost power shortly after again. And that power that showed up was a generator, but the generator doesn't cool the fuel pool, and it's just meant to circulate water in desperation. It's a desperate move, right? And they're dependent on an external power, by the way, all the time. And those big, huge generators, typically you're supposed to start them a couple of days before you're going to use them. They're very energy intensive to start on top of that. There's so much shady stuff went on.
Seconds, several minutes, several hours, and as the atoms seek stability, they're throwing off a gamma ray or an alpha or beta particle, they give off heat. It decreases pretty quickly, but you have a very substantial heat load at the beginning, and the down cooling is you pump water out into the condenser through a loop not quite shown here.
I wonder where his microphone is too. He's always turning his head too, right? The microphone will fade depending on where it's to. He's a professional though. He's allowed to do it.
And then back in again. They lost the ability to do that when they lost the diesel generators. When the tsunami came in an hour after the shutdown,
not an hour and a half, an hour, 50 minutes.
Control rods were in place.
And reactor 1 was melting down before the tsunami got there.
There was no nuclear. They lost the ability to remove, and that's where their troubles really began. Go ahead to the next.
That was great, Matthew. I'm like educated now. I feel better. Clearly nothing happened. Look at the pictures. Nothing happened.
Next slide, please. So here is a view, a more realistic. We see the torus at the bottom.
The torus at the bottom. Forget about everything else. Let's focus down there. Hang on. Focus way down. Don't look up. All right, hang on. Time to get fancy. So this is the main pool right there. And this is also a storage pool for all. There's 70 reactors in the United States use this exact design, by the way. And there's the reactor. Now, they need everything underwater. Anything coming out of the reactor has to be underwater. So typically it comes out of water and comes over here. This is conveniently empty for some reason. But they do have fuel down here. That fuel is still splitting atoms for millions of homes, by the way. And depending on how much there, it could be 8 million homes. Because that's where they store decades of reactor cores. That's the reactor. All right. All right. Okay. Now we'll look at my version, which is this one here. You got the two fuel pools at the top and the reactor core. So when you compare it to reactor 3, Matthew Wald knew the fuel pool and the reactor core was gone in all the buildings.
That red capsule up and down is the reactor vessel. It's actually fairly small, and it's in here. The diagonal pipes lead down.
See, the torus at the bottom of it doesn't matter. You know why? First off, because this is what they knew but never told you, that these reactors were gone. And they knew that when they first looked at the reactor. The first look the world had was this picture. This is one of the pictures. But everybody had that picture. And Matthew Wald had that picture. He knew the reactor core and the fuel pool were ejected from the building. And the same thing with reactor 1. They knew the fuel pool was ejected from the building, which could be 8 reactor cores, right? They had that documentation. But there wasn't an academic on the planet that didn't look at these two particular buildings. There's 4 of them melted down with 8 reactor cores in each of them. plus the running reactors, 9. So 36 reactor cores. Most of it was in the fuel pools at the top of 4 buildings. And Matthew could show you that picture, but he didn't. He could show you that picture of reactor 3, but he didn't, because you would say, well, everything's gone. He shows you the design he's shown you.
From the primary containment, from the dry well into the wet well, and that's where this would be. You see, there's an itsy bitsy of a man in the torus, the bottom right. That's just shown for scale. Actually, nobody in his right would be in there.
Nobody in their right mind would be in there, but it's just for scale. Do you see it? It's right there. I'll show it to you. Right where my finger is to. A man stood up in the torus. It can hold 1 million gallons. But it's irrelevant if you got no power. Right? The tsunami actually ran right through the site. Did I mention that by any chance? And nuclear is no different from anywhere else, so it got pummeled. It got turned like a big wood chipper went through it. So the site was the same thing. You can imagine coming in at 500 miles per hour, and then the first thing you're going to hit is the nuclear plant. That's why the buildings exploded. That's why they don't exist anymore. And that's why Stanford waited 3 months to put together a really... They had to do some kind of response, right? Because Harvard and MIT... From
the primary containment, from the dry well into the wet well, and that's where this would be... You see, there's an itsy bitsy of a man in the torus, the bottom right. That's just shown for scale. Actually, nobody in his right would be in there. In this picture.
So why put him in there?
You also see in this picture.
Well, the buildings are 190 feet above the deck. 19 stories, 65 meters. They're 150 feet wide. They're huge apartment buildings, right?
The spent fuel pool, if you see the head of the reactor, you see to the right of that is the spent fuel pool. And the way you refuel this thing is, over the head of the reactor, we've got a lid on the primary containment, and over that, we've got some concrete blocks. You use the crane, shown here, parked on the right, that red thing. It rolls over, picks up the blocks, removes the top of the containment, removes the vessel head. Now, all that has to be done underwater because the radiation field is so high. So during refueling, you flood the area over those blocks. The crane then will pluck out individual fuel assemblies and move them over to the spent fuel pool. You may have heard about this design that one of the problems is the spent fuel pool is up in the air. This has some advantages. You're able to move the stuff quickly. The amount of time you spend moving each individual assembly is quite short. That keeps your outage short. The disadvantage is in case of earthquake or in case of Mohammed Atta in a 757 or various...
In case of a terrorist from 9/11, that was pretty low to put that out there. That was really low, eh? And what a gutter big this guy is.
Other problems, the theory is that that pool is a little more vulnerable.
The fuel pool has no containment. The fuel that's in it is still splitting the same atoms as it was for millions of homes to power them. And there's no containment. That's why almost all nuclear plants are surrounded by fires.
Anyway, here, this is a good image of both the primary containment and the secondary containment. We're, of course, looking at a cutaway view here. The secondary containment up on the top, that's the thing that blew up when they had hydrogen that they were trying to vent from the primary containment to the exterior, but ended up in the secondary containment again. Before you can clean this up, before you can defuel that reactor, you're going to have to rebuild that secondary containment. Let's go on to the next slide, please.
Let's do that again.
Anyway, here, this is a good image of both the primary containment and the secondary containment. We're, of course, looking at a cutaway view here. The secondary containment up on the top, that's the thing that blew up when they had hydrogen.
The secondary containment on the top is what blew up when they had a hydrogen explosion, I guess he was going to say, right? The second containment, which I'm over here now, because his pictures are right where, well, I'll go back here for 1 second, because I'm right in the way of the little pictures he's trying to use. What a waste of time, hey? And it's not, I didn't make the video, he did. So he's talking about at the top of the buildings to contain the secondary containment, which is the outside section above me. He said it was broken. They're going to have to rebuild it.
We're trying to vent from the primary containment to the exterior, but ended up in the secondary containment again. Before you can clean this up, before you can defuel that reactor, you're going to have to rebuild that secondary containment.
Before you can defuel the reactor that doesn't exist anymore, you're going to have to rebuild that containment. Man. Wow. Now we know where they got Matthew Wald, sir. There's nothing left. There is no fuel pools. There is no reactor core. I'm going to get back over, because you can't see the picture he's trying to show you anyway. Like, if one of the reactors blow up, you can't get near to the other ones. You had 4 blow up in a row. You had all the fuel pools detonate. Reactor 3 ejected the reactor core and the fuel pools right out of the buildings. So guess where they landed? They came straight back down. You have 9 reactor cores landing all around you. You are never, you can't go to the top of these buildings and rebuild something, even if they weren't completely destroyed. Once you have a meltdown, that's no-go zone forever.
Let's go on to the next slide, please.
That was really disgusting.
These are fuel assemblies. So I had showed you.
They're 12 feet long. There's 100 of them in each assembly, and each fuel rod is 18 pounds, 12 feet. So it's 1,800 pounds assembly.
Previously, my show and tell, our little
show and tell. Did he even acknowledge there was nuclear meltdown after 3 months? No.
Pellet here. The pellets sit in those rods. The rods are bundled together, and the whole thing is wrapped in a zirconium sheath. Both the rod and that bigger wrapper. Zirconium is not chosen for its strength. It's not chosen because it's chemically inert. It ain't. It's chosen because it's transparent to neutrons, and the whole purpose is to multiply the population until you have a lot of neutrons that will carry on the chain reaction. This is what, by the way, this is what sits in spent fuel pools. Go on to the next slide, please. This sequence, I think this was circulated by the Nuclear Energy Institute, the industry's main trade association here. Top left, core uncovered. Usually, you have the whole core either bathed in water or...
So he's saying that the fuel, some of the fuel in something melted or just sink to the bottom, so to speak. Well, first off, the buildings don't even exist. It's 100% loss at all 4 buildings. And Stanford is telling the story 3 months later. So I guess it's the official cover story for the media to come out and regurgitate.
Or some mixture of water and steam.
If they can bring in a mouth reader and figure out what he was saying every half sentence.
Or some mixture of water and steam in which it's mostly water. The core uncovers, the zirconium clad starts to melt, those little pellets start falling out. So we go from core uncovered to, in not very long, fuel overheating, and then we get the fuel elements slumping, some of the pellets falling to the bottom, and we get this molten mass in the middle. And then looking across the bottom, you see The first slide, which we hope is still our case, we get the core damage but retained in the vessel. The theory is if you go long enough, some of it's going to melt through into the lower reactor pressure vessel, and then possibly even get out of the containment. One of the problems here is the zirconium clad and those zirconium channels react with steam, and they give off hydrogen. They go through a sort of rust-type reaction. They dissolve into a powder. They give off hydrogen. If you have oxygen handy, you will get an explosion. Go on to the next slide, please.
Or spark.
And as I said, I'm showing you a variety of schematics of differing complexity. This one, the point I wanted to make is you introduce cooling water on the outside. It goes down to the bottom of the vessel. It flows up through the core, and then you get the steam out the top. The problem with this design is once you mess with the geometry of the core, once you've started melting that like it's a bunch of little birthday candles that are parked too close together and melting each other, once
like a bunch of birthday candles. These candles, by the way, if you take a pound of it and put it in the wall at a subway, behind gyprock or something, or behind a piece of steel, everybody who walks past that for 1 million years will drop dead that day or that week. You know, like a birthday candle.
you get to that situation, water's not going to flow very well. You have hot spots, you have molten areas. Once you start dumping some of the core into the bottom of the vessel, that's going to be a problem too, to keep it cool. Once you start putting in salt water, because that's all you have handy, you have an additional problem, which is you're not removing heat from the salt water, you're actually boiling away the water to keep it cool. It's called feed and bleed. It's like you had a pot of boiling eggs on the stove, and for some reason you couldn't turn the stove off, so you kept putting in more water. All of that heat is going up as steam. You're concentrating the salt. Well, the salt is going to start to mess things up. The salt is going to start to block things up. Now, we have an additional problem here, which is they managed to overpressurize the whole system in the first few hours. You see the things labeled jet pump on either side. There were recirculation pumps.
Well, in the first few hours, you were doing nothing. There was no power. You had a tsunami run through the site. You talked about the pressure's rising. Right, once the tsunami ran through the site, you're not running around doing jack shit. Nothing's going to be working, okay? You need an enormous amount of power to go against 1,400 pounds per square inch pressure to introduce water in there. So we're only talking the first 2 hours, right? But this is what happened in the first 2 hours. This is what a big section of the coastline was looking like.
They're actually located a little lower down towards the bottom than this schematic indicates. And they blew the seals on those, which means you've got reactor water leaking out of the vessel into the primary containment, and possibly you've got bits of fuel that have been atomized or broken up into suspension. So we're starting to spread our fission products, all the things that the uranium was broken up into, the highly radioactive stuff, the cesium, the strontium, the iodine, etc. We're starting to...
Uranium, americium, plutonium, strontium. He goes right for the iodine, eh?
Spread that over the whole plant. Go on to the next slide.
Over the whole plant right away. Now, he's not talking about the actual meltdown.
Please. This is yet another view. I just want to give you the feeling that it's complicated in there. It is crowded. There are defined flow paths, and those flow paths probably don't exist anymore. This is a good view of the ability of at the bottom we've got the control rod drive motors. The control rods actually live in the vessel, but there's a penetration at the bottom of the vessel for each one of those shafts that's going to push the control rod up between the assemblies. Those are potential leakage points. There are many other potential leakage points. We've got the core grid, which is no longer a grid. Now, one of the theories was you get the fuels lumped together, and then you get a renewed reaction, a renewed chain reaction. You have no way to stop it because you don't have geometry anymore. You can't insert the control rods. It's a matter of conjecture by engineers whether that's actually possible. That's where the idea of the China syndrome comes from. You get the core to become a molten mass at the bottom, it burns its way through, and obviously the term China syndrome was invented by Americans. If it melts all the way through to the center of the earth and comes out the other side from Japan, it's not going to China. I have a reporter who lives, I have an editor who lives in Baltimore who's very concerned about this. So I told her I looked it up, and actually it comes out in Baltimore.
Did you hear the people yucking it up there? That's their cue, right? Oh, the China reaction. It's not going to come out in China. It's going to come out in Baltimore. And that was the cue just to yuck it up now, just completely.
In reality, it comes out somewhere in Brazil. But
right, because everybody's worried about a nuclear meltdown. So what he done was, that was they were mocking anybody who was concerned, right?
In reality, it comes out somewhere in Brazil. But I don't think we're going to get a China syndrome. I think you may have, there's scattered evidence for inadvertent criticalities, little pockets where you can get a renewed chain reaction. That produces lots of heat, steam, energy. It blows the mass apart. You lose your critical mass. It might be reestablished. We may be having that. We may not. It may take years to figure that out until you can open this up and see what went on inside.
Well, this is 3 months later. So this is 3 months later. So the new reactor 3, the fuel pool reactor cores were ejected right into the buildings. No China syndrome there, right? They knew the same thing for reactor 4 behind me. And they knew the same thing for reactor 1. But who knows about the reactor core below the fuel pool? The fuel pool detonation was right away. Let me just explain this for 1 second. Where's those pictures? Here they are. So you see the volume of material. Call it whichever you want for a second. Same thing with reactor 1. This is reactor 3. So the top of the buildings are like, in fact, this is what they say reactor 4 looks like today. Oh, and reactor 3 looks like this today. It never really got damaged. That's the official story. So ask yourself, what is at the top of that building that can create plumes so massive? Besides the 4 decades of reactor cores. What else could produce these incredible massive plumes at the top of each of these boiling water reactors? The only thing there is the fuel pools. And in reactor 3 to your right, reactor 4 to your left, well, reactor 3 explosion, reactor 1, we don't have a picture of reactor 4, but would you agree with me reactor 4 to your left blew up? Is it a far stretch to say that that was an explosion? The entire 190-foot building? So when you look at the plume of reactor 1, it's a huge plume. Reactor 3, because it was a plutonium mixed oxide reactor, it produced an even bigger plume. And that plume wasn't the sheet metal on the roof. That was the 4 decades of the entire legacy of reactor cores. Despite the fact that they're pretending they're on top of reactor 4 in 2013.
What I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4.
And so it's not just Matthew Wald. All your journalists and all your universities have worked diligently to keep this away from you.
And let's go on to the last slide. This is yet another view. What we have here is the primary containment. They flooded the dry well, that upside down light bulb that's usually kept dry. They pumped seawater into it, first water and then seawater, in a desperate effort to cool the core, which is that red box in the middle. And and they figured they could draw heat off from the exterior.
And when the tsunami ran through the site, you didn't have control over the site anymore. There was nothing functional left on the site. Right? Once this thing ran through your site and had its way with your site, you were a big wood chipper. You weren't doing jack. And so he's being completely dishonest when he says they were doing this or doing that.
What this shows is one potential configuration, although it's not clear we have this now. And
so 3 months later, they're claiming the containment, everything is intact, the fuel melted a bit and dropped to the bottom of the containment, which clearly is not what happened. Because he's 3 months down the road. So what they're doing is a cover again. A cover
what this shows is one potential configuration, although it's not clear we have this now. And in this configuration, we've got the fuel slumping down to the bottom of the vessel, burning through, ending up at the bottom of the dry well.
Dripping down.
Down there is some concrete, and this could turn into a problem because if you heat concrete enough, it'll give off hydrogen and carbon monoxide, and those can combine explosively. We're also looking here at the torus, which is much too full. They've been venting out of the torus. The idea was to vent to the exterior. There are some differences between Japanese plants and American plants, but I hear contradictory information about them. This was not originally designed with a vent. They added the vent later because they figured they might get into this kind of accident. They didn't want to overpressurize. American plants have hardened vents. They look like sewer pipes, and that will carry the explosive hydrogen out to the exterior. The theory is that the Fukushima plant had vents that looked like ductwork in your house.
Right, and I had showed that to you. Let me show it to you one more time. They had ductwork that looks like the ductwork in your house. You can see it up there now. That's the ventilation system. And you can actually see the vents on it. Right, you can see one right there. There's another one right there. There's another one right there, for instance, right? So these are vents to whisk hydrogen buildup away. So the vents don't matter in context of what created all this massive plume that covered the whole site. Was it the vents or was it the fuel pools? Well, the only thing there is the fuel pools that, and then when you look at the actual documentation, and when you look at it after 2000, these are 2013, when they stripped it away, what was left, and then this is when they claimed they're getting fuel out of the pool, and this picture was the strangest picture, because anybody who knows anything about these reactors knows everything is gone. Thought I had a better picture for you there, but this roll
with a forced air heating system, and the ductwork ruptured. You got the secondary containment filled with hydrogen. Hydrogen will explode at a very broad range of concentrations with air. Something set it off.
It wasn't a hydrogen explosion. Right? The reactors are 1,000 pounds per square inch. They got no way of cooling, so the temperature will never stop rising. So it was a it was an excursion event. It was a pressurized explosion. That was the original explosion, which happened to be full of hydrogen also, and that set off the hydrogen. Well, it was melting down. Once it came out of the containment, you had all the 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. So that was also capable of setting off it. But a lot of credibility is suggesting there's such high pressure and there's so much temperatures that if they don't go into cold shutdown, right? They have a criticality type shutdown. The pressure will expand so quick, they'll blow up anyway. So if they melt through, creating the spark that'll cause the hydrogen to explode, or the vessels just explode because they can't contain the pressure no more, one or the other is guaranteed to happen, or both, right?
And poof, they blew away the external containment, leaving the spent fuel pool sitting out in the open. Actually,
Let me do that again.
and poof, they blew away the external containment, leaving the spent fuel pool sitting out in the open.
And that's really important what he said that time. So blew away the exterior, leaving the fuel pools sitting out in the open. Well, when she blew up, she ejected the fuel pools in reactor 3 right into the building. Remember he showed you that picture at the beginning? And this picture that was available on the 15th shows reactor 1. Any academic on the planet in the nuclear industry, any professor, is going to say reactor 1's fuel pools are gone, reactor 3, reactor 4 for sure. Number 2 burnt constantly for days. And like you can't, once one of these blows up or melts down, even just the meltdown, you can't get near the other ones. Because you're talking about Chernobyl was a graphite, it was a single reactor, where these had around 9 reactor cores at the top of each of the buildings. Once one burns, because it doesn't need oxygen once it starts burning, the zirconium cladding lights up when it's exposed to oxygen.
Actually, I think we do have a couple more slides here. One of them is going to show the spent fuel pool in the... I'm sorry, go on to, skip this one, go on to the next one.
Skip that one.
So here we have the spent fuel pool on the top.
Skip that one. He's going to show you the fuel pool at the top of the building is what he was going to say. Then he said skip that one.
Right, and if it was empty,
it's not just that size, both
seems to think it was empty at one point.
Right, it's not. It's both sides. They're storing the fuel because they don't have a repository. And the same with the American reactors. They have 70 identical reactors, and they're stuffed to over capacity.
Right, and if it was empty, the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission seems to think it was empty at one point. It's generating heat, it boiled off, they didn't get any more water in there in time. The cladding on those rods also generated hydrogen, and that's how you got a hydrogen explosion in Unit 4.
Well, you see that bottom's black sentence over there? You see the orange one, the fairly big letters? The bottom one says the Fukushima Daiichi, March 11th, 2011. It is currently unclear if the release from the fuel pool has already happened. That was March, it's either March 11th or March the 21st. I can't really tell. It could be March the 21st. He's 3 months down the road. Well, it was very clear when you look at the pictures. That's blatantly clear that the fuel pool, and the same thing with not that one, but these will show you the fuel pools are gone, and unequivocally that shows you the fuel pools are gone, and unequivocally that shows you the fuel pools are gone. Matthew skipped the picture, but I can't.
Right, and if it was empty, the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission seems to think it was empty at one point.
So if it's empty of water, the zirconium cladding around the fuel rods will ignite the minute they're exposed to oxygen. That's the same zirconium they used to use in the old cameras in the dirty 30s, I think it was era. So they had these great big flashes with a glass lid, and they had a hammer on the camera. The hammer would go up and break the glass when they clicked the picture. This hammer goes up and breaks the glass, and the zirconium now is exposed to oxygen, and it literally just detonates, has a big reflector, right? It's the exact same stuff. It has the same violent reaction.
It's generating heat, it boiled off, they didn't get any more water in there in time. The cladding on those rods also generated hydrogen, and that's how you got a hydrogen explosion in Unit 4.
So that's reactor 4 he's showing you, and I believe that is the 21st. He's got there for a date. All the reactors were gone, like reactor 3 was gone. 1, 2, 3, and 4 were all gone. This one of the first pictures. Look how grainy that is. You know, because you're at a nuclear meltdown, right? Here, this picture. Let me just grab a picture of reactor 4 because somehow I had a picture of it there. Now I don't for some reason. Well, that's not the best picture. I want to get the comparison. That'll take me a second. Now, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags of radioactive fallout topsoil. So clearly something happened. Who had shares in that company, I wonder? So the fuel, again, this is reactor 4. We had the fuel pools are at the top of the building with the reactor core. Clearly it doesn't exist anymore, right? But the original footage, which is this footage here, and these explosions, reactor 1, reactor 3, you can see reactor 4 is 100% destroyed. And we have the luxury of hindsight. Reactor 2 we know, and there was, back then, right from the get-go, as soon as it happened, there was significant speculation reactor 2 had lost its entire inventories, had burnt constantly for days.
There's no fuel in the actual vessel. Now, I'll give you a quick update on what's going on today, which is a few hours ago, the Japanese announced they're going to plan evacuations in a more leisurely fashion at greater distances. This is kind of disturbing.
So this is 3 months later. A few days shy of 3 months later. They're going to start evacuating other places. Because they don't want to try to explain deformed babies and catastrophic health in the entire population of a city. So spread them out all over the place, and then it's hard to get a consensus whether there's any health effects or not, right?
It's not because of acute exposures, it's because they've done so.
And not because of a huge exposure. Because they just felt like, yeah, get the frig out of your city. We're TEPCO. We're a corporation. I'm better than you. Not because of radiation, right, Matthew?
So much long-lived radioactive material, probably cesium, in the area that it's not.
Probably cesium in the area. You sure it's not plutonium. Sure it's not curium, which is the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod. And you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. Disgusting.
It's not safe to occupy it for long periods. So you'd be fine there for a day or a week, but if
you'll be fine there for a day or a week. No, if it's a nuclear wasteland, it's a nuclear wasteland. Like, because you breathe it in, it sequesters in your muscles, your organs, your bones. It pulses energy every second at the speed of light, destroying chromosomes, DNA, and cells. Your body attacks all the damage every second, tries to repair white blood cells. And at the same time, it has to attack the source, the radiation atom in your body, with white blood cells, like a suicide squad, for the rest of your life, every moment of your life, to build a tumor around it. So you're not going to be okay for a minute. You're not going to be okay for an hour, and you're definitely not going to be okay for days or weeks like this. Just creatures just
going to spend year after year there, your dose will be too high. We're now talking about either.
Because he wants to measure it. Oh, it was just a few millisieverts or millirims or something. It's unbelievably dishonest, everything he's saying.
A massive cleanup challenge or land abandonment a la Chernobyl, at least in some hotspots.
In some hotspots. Let me look at the hotspot again. We got a study from France on the hotspots, actually. At 1 million to 10 million atoms covering the entire planet per cubic meter of air of cesium-137. You can't just have cesium, by the way. These are absurd numbers per cubic meter of air. So the disposition, this is pre-Fukushima levels they're talking about of cesium-137. It could be 10, 20, 30 million atoms of cesium-137 blanketing your entire planet in 23 days. He would have been unbelievably aware of all of the information I'm showing you, by the way. There's nothing I showed you from that era, from those 3-month period where he done the presentation before that he wasn't aware of. I can tell you that much.
The other thing is that the Japanese are preparing to upgrade their assessment of this accident on the 7-point international scale. At the moment, it's at 5, which is where 3 Mile Island was. And
so he has no issues with accepting that. Stanford has no issues with accepting that is only equal to a 3 Mile Island. Really. Stanford's assertions is that 4 reactors melting down with 8 reactor cores in the 2 fuel pools at the top of each of the buildings warrants the same statute as 3 Mile Island. Really. Like, do you got any idea how criminal what he's doing is? If it was a crime, it's not a crime to lie to you about this. It's not a crime to poison you with radiation. Right? Your Congress, your parliaments don't have the authority to make it illegal to poison you. Only the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has that authority. It's surreal that he would even frame the propaganda that way. It's disgusting.
they're about to reclassify it as 7, which is the most serious and where Chernobyl was.
So now they're going to move it up to Chernobyl. Chernobyl was a brand new reactor. It was a single reactor. It was a graphite reactor. These were 4 massive uranium-plutonium reactors melting down at one time. Chernobyl didn't have fuel pools at the top of the buildings full of decades of reactor cores like Chernobyl did. And Fukushima had 36 reactor cores melt down in 4 buildings, right, because of the fuel pools. Well, I can see why the Nuclear Energy Institute hired them.
One of the differences is most of this radiation is spread locally or spread over the ocean. Chernobyl spread radioactive materials over enormous land areas. They're about to reclassify it as 7. They're about to reclassify it as 7, which is the most serious and where Chernobyl was. One of the differences is most of this radiation.
One of the differences compared to Chernobyl. He's going to say Chernobyl spread radiation around the world. Fukushima didn't. Watch. I don't know for sure. We'll see.
Radiation spread locally or spread over the ocean. Chernobyl spread radiation.
Fukushima spread locally and over the ocean. Now let's have a look at what Fukushima done in 23 days. Covered the entire planet, did it? Oh yeah, okay.
Radiation spread locally or spread over the ocean. Chernobyl spread radioactive materials over enormous land areas.
So he's saying Fukushima didn't have those attributes. That's why Chernobyl's worse. Chernobyl's worse than 36 reactor cores melting down, even though it's clearly not. Just
and areas that were not very well prepared for it. So it's more reactors than Chernobyl was. It's happening in a place where there's some.
It's more reactors than Chernobyl was. It's happening in a place.
A lot better set up to cope with it.
A lot better set up to cope with it. Well, Chernobyl was 600 miles from the ocean. Fukushima is right on the ocean. It's downhill. It's right on the ocean, and everything is downhill. Fukushima had a tsunami run through it. Chernobyl had no tsunami run through it. And the whole coastline. There was no infrastructure. There was no telephones. There was no external power. There was no generators. I wonder how long before they kill me for doing what I'm doing over the years.
Although it's a mess to try to cope with a meltdown or 3 meltdowns in a spent fuel pool.
3 meltdowns at a spent fuel pool. It's 4 meltdowns and itchy nose. There was 4 meltdowns right in a row. Everybody knew this on the 15th of March, on day 5. Once one of them blows up, you can't get near the other ones. They're going to melt down too. The whole country was stripped. Like the damage to that site from the tsunami was catastrophic. But according to the Matthew Wald, they were better equipped to deal with it because they had a tsunami run through it. So therefore, they were better equipped, right?
Right after a tsunami. And that's about all I know. And I'll turn it over to Bert.
Yeah, I bet you will.
Thank you, Matt. I've never done a duet like this, and we'll see how it goes. I want to
So Matthew never told you anything useful. He lied to you the whole time. He misled you. He dragged you down a route you didn't need to go down. You actually had meltdowns. He showed you one picture of reactor 3 looking down on it, right? And reactor 2 was in the background, but that was the closest he came. The other picture, he didn't bother. Don't show that one. Don't show us that picture. Well,
do a little bit more.
sorry.
A little bit more about Fukushima, and then I'm going to switch gears and go talk about the future of nuclear. This is Japan. Japan has a lot of nuclear power. They've got 55 reactors. They get more than 20% of their electricity, and they get a lot of their total energy consumption from nuclear. Japan likes nuclear because Japan has no real sources of fossil fuel, and they're all concerned about their national security. So we have...
Well, the ratepayers are paying for it, and then it's subsidized by the ratepayer through taxes, right? The taxpayer, the government will kick in extra money for the energy on top of what the ratepayers are paying. But if they didn't steal everything, they would have lots of money to rebuild, to build new facilities before the old ones were outdated, right? That's how it's supposed to work. Instead, they steal everything. And then we got to replace this one, we might as well get a nuclear. We got to tax everybody more money. That money was already available if they didn't steal it.
Had the earthquake. One of the things that people don't understand about this earthquake is that, in fact, it was within the design of the plant.
Of course it wasn't. Lawyer?
The design basis for things like this is not earthquake magnitude, it's acceleration. The ground moves, it shakes. Does the thing fall over?
The Shinder scale.
This thing was within the...
This was a 10 out of a 10 on the Shinder scale, which is the Japanese scale is 7. This is 1.428, I think, to get it up to the Richter scale.
Design. A magnitude 9 simply meant the shaking went on for longer. So it's not that there was any screw up here in the design of the plant as far as the earthquake.
Yeah, well, actually it was. Right, they had roads torn apart through the site. They had pipes. In fact, the earthquake shifted the intakes, which are massive, because you need 1 million gallons a minute for each one, 4,500 tons. It shifted at 6.5 feet west, wasn't it? So it separated the intake pipes on top of that, tore roads and highways. There was just thousands of landslides.
Problem was the tsunami. The tsunami, their seawall was only 20 or so feet high. The wave was 45 feet high.
And he's not a nuclear expert, is he? He's involved in physics, but he's not an actual nuclear power plant expert or something like that.
Why that was done, I
Stanford.
don't know. And there you got all the trouble. As Matt said, you've got to keep this fuel cool even after you stop the reactor. Right afterwards, 7%. A year afterwards, 0.1%.
Yeah, but they all blew up in the first 5 days. So 2 months, 1 year, 4 years don't mean anything anymore.
And that fuel has got to be kept in water for...
Well, not just water, a special type of water. It has to be circulated constantly. They didn't have that. That wasn't happening. So he's saying, he's refusing to put in the rest of the equation.
Or 3 to 4 years before you can take it out and not.
Like, these are nuclear meltdowns. You're not going to be taking the fuel out of those buildings ever because it ejected it right out of the buildings and it burnt constantly for days, whatever was left. There was nothing left. In 3 years, this is what was left of the buildings, and just when they claimed they were getting fuel out of the pool, which are at the top of the buildings that don't exist. That's okay. I'm only going to tell you 500 more times.
Worry about
Back
it
to a
melting
regular show
itself.
tomorrow night, by the way.
This is a look at the radiation release that goes with all of the explosions. Every time you saw a hydrogen explosion, you see a big spike in it. And the spikes go way up above what is the normal background radiation. The average background in the US is about 0.3 microsieverts per hour. This is microsieverts per hour, so way down. Let's see if this thing works. It does. Way down here at the bottom is the normal background. You can tell what's failing because of the signals you get from the radioactive material. When you start to see things that only are produced as fission products, you know something has broken. The first thing that goes bad is the cladding, and then you get the gaseous products released, and those with low vapor pressure, and then the fuel itself begins to crumble, and now you get different materials out, and you can keep pretty good track of it.
Oh, the homeless with the Geiger counters can. First off, like, what this is the first picture he should be shown was reactor 1 detonating. This is month 3, right? Hang on here. The original pictures are the most important to every one of these stories, to any story, right? The original documentation. So he's seen this. He knew the buildings were gone. He knew the fuel pools were gone. He knew the reactor cores were gone. And if he didn't, when he seen that, his buddies who did know told him that. Same as Matthew Wald. And same thing with reactor 1. See, it's visibly undeniable when you look at that, particularly reactor 3, or the original footage of the buildings. And so his job is to promote nuclear, not harm it. And so he's not going to touch anything.
This is a look at what the radiation levels are outside the plant. Now remember, I said that in the US, the average is about 0.3 microsieverts per hour. This region of Japan is lower than that. There's very little rock here. It's all sort of dirt and so forth. And their level is about 0.1. This is almost at background.
So he says less radiation in Japan than it is in the United States after 36 reactor cores blow up and melt down. Wow, that's fascinating.
And you can see these things decaying further. As of now, the radiation levels, as Matt said, are low.
All right, let's just challenge that for 1 second. Just a couple of headlines, maybe. Because he's got 3 months down the road. So French government was 1 million times normal study on the West Coast. Radiation levels on the U.S. West Coast spiked. Not projected to spike, but spiked 1 million to 10 million times. This was the radioactive follow-up of neptunium-239, which decays to plutonium-239 on day 20. And plutonium, of course, on 20 days later. Levels in Tokyo at 29 million atoms a square meter underground of just cesium-137. Almost all their studies will look at cesium and won't acknowledge anything else. Just gammas, no betas, no alphas, no neutrons. Nothing else exists, only just one isotope or iodine. And so huge numbers acknowledged, re-acknowledged in some of these stories, right? Massive numbers. But actual studies shown absurd amount. Like the documentation, the pictures that were available to everybody of the explosions. And then to have these professors of the best institutions in history come out and lie to you blatant. Every single university. This is our third university now we covered in a row.
But it's not the radiation levels, it's the problem of living with things for a long time and ingesting radioactive material.
Yeah, fuel.
The danger from another explosion is low at the moment, and the amount of...
So that's 3 weeks later, or 3 months later, the danger from another explosion. Well, you really think another explosion at this place after this one is going to be in comparison? I mean, you're ejected the reactor core and the fuel pools right out of the buildings. So what he's framing a narrative is nothing happened.
Additional radioactive material that's likely to be deposited off-site is small. Now, for the...
a study on the worms showed that the worms excreting 60 miles away was almost 1.4 million atoms per kilogram.
Students, and for the people interested, I've included a couple of slides of information sources and references for those of you who want to read more about this. And now I want to switch gears to the future, and I want to start off with nuclear accidents. Now, Matt has shown how young he is because he doesn't know where the term the China syndrome came from. It's actually the title of a movie with Jane Fonda, and the movie came out within 2 weeks of 3 Mile Island, and the scenario was just as Matt described it. The fuel melted, the fission went on in this lump, and it slowly melted its way down through. I don't remember how Jane Fonda saved the world, but she and her hero did, and if she remembered, maybe they should send her over to Japan right now. So we had two...
He should be arrested for what he done, eh? Because people were depending upon Berkeley and Stanford and Oxford and MIT and Harvard and Yale. They can make their decisions whether they need to protect themselves or not. And so when you come and watch these criminals, these terrorists lie to you, you don't get to defend yourself. So everybody that took his advice should sue him for misleading you.
Two very big accidents before. 3 Mile Island, partial core meltdown, containment buildings, little radiation off-site. And if you want to read more details, that's the URL of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's review. And in fact, one of the people who was on that review, Bill Mady, is sitting over there in the corner. So if you ask nasty questions about that, I'm going to refer it over to him.
Really? 3 Mile Island, people came home after evacuating way too late because they were tricked and deceived by Dick Thornburg. People came back to find their pets they left home blind from the radiation fallout or dead, or blind and then dead. They done studies later, cancer clusters, hotspots where cancer just skyrocketed.
Chernobyl was the world's worst.
Chernobyl was a single reactor. How can that be worse than 36 reactor cores disappearing? Like, it's almost like he couldn't wait to get out there and tell the law. Everything was scripted. He had 3 months to prepare the script. Just come out and pretend everything is normal.
Chernobyl was both a power reactor and a plutonium producer. It was a reactor not used for civilian purposes outside the Soviet bloc because it could become unstable. The operators moved it into an unstable region, disabled.
What's he doing with his hands? You can see his arms going back, both arms. Like he's rubbing. He's having a good time.
All the safety systems. It ran away, and you had a steam explosion, not a nuclear explosion. Just the cooling water just flashed to steam, blew the lid off the reactor, blew the lid off the building. Fire started in the carbon moderator, and there we were with the world's worst accident. Wikipedia's article on Chernobyl is quite good.
So he's directing people to look at Chernobyl because he says it's worse. Wow.
So what happened after 3 Mile Island? That's relevant because things are going to happen after Fukushima too. There were major changes in safety regulations.
Yeah, that's why you have sirens up to 150 around nuclear power plants. It was a concession not to kill the nuclear industry.
Many modifications made to plants to handle the loss of coolant. And something new set up called INPO, the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations, set up by the industry to exchange information.
Well, you made all those changes, but Fukushima lost 36 reactors, so it didn't work. Now, did it?
Information to work with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, set better operating standards, etc. The setting up of this made huge amounts of money for the nuclear reactor operators, although they opposed it at the beginning, because one of the results of creating INPO is that the uptime of the reactors went from around 60% to more than 90%. So you got 50% more electricity from the same reactor that you'd already built. It was a good deal, and Chernobyl was a different case.
They got the same gigawatt now as they did in the early 90s. And they've been doing this trick forever now, it seems, where because they're not building new reactors are going off lines. And so what they do with the reactors worldwide, they're running them with more power to try to keep their place on the energy scale, hoping for a nuclear renaissance they know is never going to come to fruition.
Entirely. That's the remains of the reactor. That's a picture of it before it was entombed in concrete using robot cranes and all sorts of things. There are several reactors on the site. This is the only one that went, blew up, and it now is buried in concrete. You can't see this. The whole thing is covered, and they're going.
And all 600 pilots died. They were dropping the sand and boron down on the reactor. Fukushima blew up too, multiple reactors.
To have to
that
go
don't matter, does it?
do something about that.
It's waste
So
all of our time talking about 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl.
Safety reviews and improvements in the RMBK, the Chernobyl-type reactor, were undertaken by Russia and the IAEA. Many of them were shut down, others modified to improve safety systems, and in fact, a lot of the
reading
money
the script the whole way,
for that came from the European Union and the United States to fund cleanup in the states of the Soviet. Well, in the Soviet bloc. Russia handled its own. INPO went international, and now we have the World Association of Nuclear Operators, WANO. I don't know whether anybody calls it that, but that's it. Now we had one more thing, which wasn't a nuclear thing, but it was 9/11. That caused extensive reviews for the adequacy of containments if they're hit by aircraft, security of the plants from terrorist attacks, and substantial improvements in security, and most of that is classified because they don't want the terrorists to know what the new security.
La Hague reprocessing site in France has 500 security guards. You know how many the coal, gas, and oil plant that runs them sites have? None. The security's there to keep you from taking pictures or getting too close with a Geiger counter.
Things are. Some auxiliary systems are strengthened, and now any new thing has to have security from an airplane crash. Now, let's look at the world. If you look at the world and look at electricity generation, in the world...
Why are we talking about this? You had 4 reactors melt down. You're not going to talk about that, but that's your response video.
Things are. Some auxiliary systems are strengthened, and now any new thing has to have security from an airplane crash. Now, let's look at the world.
That's okay. It's part of the process tonight.
If you look at
The
the world and
audience
look at electricity generation,
We'll make it work.
in the world, coal is a big thing, gas is next.
Yeah,
Then
coal's
there's
cheap. It's natural. It
electricity,
doesn't-
well, no.
Everything's
Yeah.
already acclimated
Then
to it.
there's nuclear is the next big thing, 20% in the U.S., 16%.
Nuclear doesn't share the grid with anybody. The grid is designed to ostracize wind, solar, geothermal, etc.
Worldwide. And then after a big hydro, much lower values for the renewables. Nuclear reactors are all around the world. There are about 400 of them now. Of that 400, roughly 25% are the boiling water reactors like that at Fukushima. At 2009, when I got this, there were 435 in use, 28 under construction, 200 planned. Now there are more operating,
Now there's
58
like
under
414
construction,
or something.
and still more planned. Nuclear had become a big thing. And nuclear became a big thing for different reasons, depending on where in the world you were. If you looked in Asia, what you saw was a desire for energy. Desire for energy and national security. And
Well, everybody's already paid for the energy every day, right? There's money goes to upkeep and there's money goes to replacement. And when they don't do their job, then they're concerned about if the people they hire don't do their job / the government, and then the infrastructure is breaking down, then there's a concern because it shouldn't be happening. But they're not aware that the money's being looted, that they already entrusted for upkeep and maintenance and for replenishment to rebuild new ones, right?
And so they wanted to go nuclear to get more electricity without having to import more stuff. China, by the way, has to import coal now. Even though it has coal supplies and a lot of coal-fired power plants, it imports it. So China had a good reason to do it.
Like the whole infrastructure for nuclear is prohibitively expensive. You need precious metals that are extremely rare and difficult and expensive. But the big thing about the big nuclear power plant is you can build a nuclear plant, but you still need 2 dedicated gas, oil, or coal plants, 2 massive gas, oil, and coal plants to run the nuclear plant. So he's just doing a public relations thing. Do we skip
Japan and
him, or
Korea were continuing
we keep
their
going, I guess?
increase. A lot of countries new to nuclear were talking about them, and in fact, some of these countries have already put in purchase orders for.
That's the same scam they ran originally, right? Economy of scale. We have 3 more gigawatts now than we did in the early 90s. There is no nuclear renaissance. So he's there trying to convince other people that might be online watching it to buy stocks.
New reactors. So
Something
in the U.S., nuclear power plants are
He's in charge of your
prepared
kids.
for extreme events. The criteria for nuclear power plants are set by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
non-regulatory.
And the Nuclear
commission.
Regulatory
Rubber stamp
Commission
commission.
was split off from the then Atomic Energy Commission, now Department of Energy, many years ago when people became worried about the problems of the regulators and the referees. The regulators.
But the people on the Regulatory Commission, which are put there by each administration, and the only ones that are allowed to make it illegal to poison you with radiation, clearly they're not going to do it, never have. And the next administration will just change the rules back if they did. They're the leading scumbags that destroyed the health of everybody for decades, and they get a cushy job at the regulatory agency. The corruption is criminal and is not acceptable.
And the promoters coming from the same agency. This is the problem in the oil problem in the Gulf. The people who regulated the drillers were from the same agency that promoted the drilling. Bad idea. India, last week, changed. And India set its regulatory commission free. It set it up as an independent organization. In Japan, the regulators are not independent of the agency promoting nuclear, and there has been no move yet to make them so, but I'll bet you that pretty soon there's going to be such a move. So you should think about things in a little bit different way. Old and new reactors are going to have to review safety requirements, review old ones and see what needs upgrading, review the designs for new ones and see whether you have to do more. You're going to have to look at multiple problems again. They are looked at now. So think about multiple problems. You think about earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, forest fires. All of that's going to be reviewed to see whether the requirements will handle any conceivable multiple disaster scenario. And another thing that's going to get reviewed is how long the reactors have to go on their own. All the reactors have emergency generators. All our reactors can survive entirely on their own with nothing coming from outside. But I don't know the number for how many days they have to survive that. Fukushima lost all outside electricity, lost all outside cool water, pure water, for over 2 weeks. And the only reason it has fresh water now.
There he is rubbing his legs again. I don't know how long they need. If they lose water for 50 minutes, they start melting down. Circulation, just circulation. The pressure rises incredible. It destroys the zirconium cladding with just heat. Hasn't caught fire yet. Once the steam starts, once the explosion goes, then everything ignites, right? So he said 2 weeks at this point. He's 3 months ahead.
Is our Navy came in with 3 huge barges full of fresh water.
Yeah, but you need 1 million gallons a minute typically to keep them cool. Once they start running away, you need even more, more water. They came in. This is the 15th. This is day 5. All the reactors have lost their inventories at this stage. There's still a nightmare on the side. But basically left on the side is 2 or 3 reactor cores out of 36.
Our Navy came in with 3 huge barges full of fresh water, which is where it all comes from.
We chopped it out so I don't have to listen to that nutty shit again.
Matt mentioned there's a difference between between the boiling water and the pressurized water. And the difference is what's inside the containment. This little thing down here, come on, thing. This little thing down here is the...
I apologize. Like, neither one of them, like, they might just accidentally mention Fukushima, then they just switch off again.
reactor. All these other things are steam generators,
Audience will be
pumps, all the
fun.
rest of it, and this is the containment. In this reactor,
You'll
new
be finished
design,
soon.
generation 3+ called, the reactor vessel is 15 feet in diameter. The containment
It's
building is
promoting
100
future
feet in
reactors,
diameter. There's a
generation
lot
3.
more stuff in there. So all of that is going to get reviewed. Now, one of the things you should also know is that there's general agreement in the world that the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission is the gold standard of licensing and regulating reactors. Even the French agree that our system is much tighter. And I say even the French because the French get 80% of their electricity from nuclear.
70% back then. And 70% of the fresh water goes to nuclear. Now, if you look at the French done to the French Polynesians, was equal to a Nagasaki bomb a week for 12 years. If you look at what they done in Nigeria, where they enslaved, they call it a civil war in the country, so they can get themselves cheap uranium, high-grade uranium, for the last 50-something years. Destroyed an entire country, destabilized the country, so that they could have dirt cheap uranium. You know, the Sahara Desert is so radioactive from their nuclear weapons that dust still finds its way back to France each year, radioactive fallout.
And the French also have one of the companies that
They rated every human in the French Polynesian Islands forever.
is one of the leading manufacturers of nuclear.
And each year, 600-700 elderly people die because the Rhine River, which is fed by the glaciers, which has been destroyed by 80 years of emission from the nuclear industry, is so hot, all the fish die in the river. The farmers can't touch the water. The nuclear industry needs it because otherwise they're going to melt down. Elderly can't use very much water because otherwise nuclear plants are going to melt down. So they end up
Everybody is going to toughen things up. I think we need to keep this thing in perspective. And there are two perspectives you should think about here.
First off, this guy is a nuclear crank. Horrifying. Let's see if he actually talks about Fukushima.
One perspective is a tsunami. There are already 14,000 dead and another.
So like, the thing, this whole, it might not seem like it because that's what they're doing on purpose, but it was supposed to be a forum for Fukushima, and they turned it into this circus. And then he's at the end of his speech now, so he like, oh, and by the way,
There are 14,000 missing.
14,000 people died from the tsunami.
28,000 people killed
Yeah.
in this. The only people killed so far in the reactor accidents are 2 people inside the building, and they think that things fell on them. They don't know yet.
So nobody died of radiation. That's what the whole song and dance.
What they died of. But this is a look at natural radioactivity in the U.S. Some of us old guys still use.
You can't conflate natural and man-made, so why are you?
Millirems instead
Disgusting,
of sieverts, but
This is
a
Stanford, the
sievert
best
is
university on
100
the
rem.
planet.
So
The best
if
of the
I
best.
say millirem here, that's 2.4 millisieverts. This is a year's dose. So you get 240 from natural. 40 of those
Natural in your
240
body.
come from radioactive potassium.
Like this is just disgusting. Natural in your body, 75 kilograms, 40 millirems a year. Like the natural stuff, you can't make a dirty bomb out of it. You can't make a reactor out of it. You can't make a nuclear weapon out of it. You can't, it has no adverse side effects on you. So potassium, magnesium, iron type so-called emitters are conflated with the anthropogenic. So what happens with anthropogenic is I can bioaccumulate non-stop till I die. Natural stuff is homeostasis. Your body regulates it. So if I got 7,500 atoms of so-called potassium 40 in my body, who cares? I can live in a football field of potassium 40. It has no adverse side effects to me whatsoever. I can eat it all day. It has no. You can't bioaccumulate any more than your body is going to use naturally. You're acclimated to it through genetic superior selection. It's dishonest in every facet of the word to use it in any context of nuclear meltdowns. It's unbelievably dishonest. He's conflating natural with man-made is what he's going to do. He should lose his degree.
In your own bones. How much you get depends on how big you are.
Scumbag.
A 160-pound man gets 40 MR. Medical gets another 60 on the average. So
Disgusting.
typically it's 300 in averaged in the Americas. And a nuclear plant emits practically nothing. And nuclear plants are...
I've seen this scam so many times. Everything is more radioactive than nuclear if you conflate it with natural. Natural is complete. It's from the solar system. We're acclimated to it through genetic superior selection. Man-made stuff, we're not acclimated. Say in the nuclear plants, all the fuel pools at the nuclear plants, and the older it is, the more fuel is in the pool. Every day that's hemorrhaging every second, massive, insidious amounts of radiation up the tall, skinny stacks. This is why typically they're surrounded by farms. Can you imagine the crimes he committed against the children when he was younger in that university?
Coal plants operating together are
sick to say stuff
about
like this.
the same. An analysis has been done. This was done in Germany. You can see the reference down here in the corner. They looked at all of the sources. This is cradle-to-grave health risk. Cradle-to-grave means from mining to transport to making ore to doing whatever you have to do to using the stuff.
Everything about what the fuel pools hemorrhage every second into your environment, which is a catastrophic health consequences for every species on the planet. Like, you got to be some sick and twisted and demented individual to put this up.
To disposing of spent fuel or ashes from a coal-fired power plant or what have you. And if you look at this, the conditions required here are what the European Union requires for emission controls.
We've covered all the public relations scams. That's one of the best ones yet.
There's a new one that's been done by the U.S., for the U.S., which doesn't handle as many things. It only looks at the fossil fuels versus nuclear. But the general conclusion is the same. If you look at years of life lost, you find nuclear sitting over here, and the only thing better than nuclear is wind. Photovoltaic, more years of life loss per unit of...
All right. Hang on a second. Pretty rotten thing to do what he's doing, eh? Pretty rotten. Every nuclear power plant is surrounded by farms. And like, even if you're in a satellite, you'll see it's absurd. And you see that the inventories at the site were incredible. So let me go up and address this for 1 second. There was, I'll bring up the documentation here first. There was 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. which is normally latent, right? 14,200 children, 14.2% of 100,000 live births, children in Japan currently need open heart surgery for congenital heart disease. 6 out of 10 Fukushima children have diabetes. Obesity rates doubled in Japan in the first year, which is a marker of radiation brain damage. 13,646 children out of 38,000, 35%, had tumors on their thyroids that were at least 2 centimeters. Now, the thyroid of a child is around 2 by 2 centimeters. An adult is 3 by 5. A huge percentage of the population of males are born with 1 testicle. Of course, for cancer, not everybody got health care. Not everybody was diagnosed in 1 year. Heart attacks, story was, might give the deaths from heart attacks might give the creeps to some people. And other, he tells the story like he's done it 1,000,000 times before. Like he's cut everybody's throat 1,000,000 times before. I could never live with myself and do something like he's doing.
Energy. And then you can find all sorts of health problems down here. The moral to the story is that hang
on here. So some of the health issues from radioactive fallout on the other side of the planet or anywhere on the planet. If you're anywhere on the planet, you got heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia. The first studies they done after Chernobyl, for instance, was autism and Down syndrome in Europe. And they also done sex ratio studies to see how bad the pollution was in Europe. After nuclear weapons testing, they done it on the whole planet. More males than females is what they were looking for, which means less population for each species, clearly, right? It's like it shocks me when I see people like him. It actually shocks me. Even all these years, 23 years later, I still can't get used to it.
Issue is
people that look like a human but hate us.
the issue is what is the hazard? Now, we got a funny thing with people. We're all people. We get scared of things we don't understand, and we're also scared of things which do a lot in a very short time. We all drive cars.
If Rod Adams and Michael Schellenberg had a baby, this is what he would look like a bit.
30,000 people every year get killed in automobile accidents.
That's a disgusting comparison to put out there. Because it's very difficult to trace your heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid. You know, like every kid and every small animal worldwide is producing radioactive hormones and radioactive stem cells in their skeleton because of Fukushima. Right? Because it's not, people are not dropping dead in fields and streets and schoolyards right away. Therefore, you have plausible deniability, and then use that to bludgeon opposition who are honest and sincere and genuine with statistics that are always going to be hid away is just.
But that doesn't
really
make
something.
us ban automobiles because we all feel we're in control. Nobody feels they're in.
You can't compare, let me do this another way. How disgusting this industry really is. I need to do like a whole week's show. If you go back and look at my anniversary videos. Oh, I know what to do. Hang on. Well, first, think of plutonium. So studies in plutonium, 144 beagle dogs. They all died within 3 to 5 years. 1.5 to 5.4 years. The majority of the tumors were in the bones. And liver tumors, lung tumors. And he said the tumors in these organs, 3 organs, often occurred in the same animal, competing causes of death. Finding in dogs suggests similar dose-related biological effects could be expected in humans. But the biggest byproduct of radiated fuel rod, by the way, is not plutonium or uranium or cesium or anything. It's actually curium isotopes. You need lead shielding 20 times thicker. And that plutonium, the human kidneys are 50 times less efficient. So it meant that you're 50 times more likely to die like the dogs did than the dogs are. And all the dogs died. Right? Okay. Well, the fuel pools at all the reactors are surrounded by farms as far as you can see. And so if you went to the supermarket and ate food from any of these hundreds and hundreds of plants worldwide that are surrounded by farms, how are you supposed to trace that back to the nuclear industry? Particularly when the nuclear industry is giving you statistics like Stanford's professor was. And grapevines suck up the radiation. You have all these studies telling you should never grow food by a nuclear plant. Cesium and strontium in fruit plants absorption. Using plants as monitor for radioactive fallout. Foliage root uptakes of cesium, strontium, zirconium. Everything, all food uptakes the radiation. They're aware of that. They have endless amount of documentation that they could have drawn from, right? It's unbelievable that somebody like him actually exists and has took the lowest road he can take in order to manipulate and deceive and coerce you into not protecting your loved ones. Because ultimately that's what he was up to.
With a nuclear power plant. And they don't realize they're not in control either with a coal-fired power plant or with the manufacturing of photovoltaics or whatever one you want to pick. So there is going to be some review, and there is going to be a public perception problem. Interestingly, there's a new poll out, and the new poll asks the question of should we do more nuclear? And the people fraction supporting it went down. Then the poll asked the second question, should we shut down our present nuclear plants? The answer did not change from before Fukushima. So people are perfectly happy to keep them going.
Because they don't understand the insidiousness of a nuclear plant. Does that, just because people don't realize you're a serial killer who hides behind a suit and tells lies to the population, does that make it okay for you to do that? You sick and demented, twisted creature.
There is a concern about it. So let me give a summary and then get Matt to bat cleanup on this. Fukushima was and still is a serious accident. There's going to be a rethinking of reactor safety and the setting of what's called design basis criteria. Wow. How big the earthquake, how big the tsunami wall, etc. Regulators around the world are going to be given more power, and I already mentioned India is the first example. The actual impact of Fukushima compared to other conventional sources is going to be small, but radiation is feared, and it's too soon to see the impact on public perceptions. Personally, I think the attitude around the world, the change is going to be quite small, and I really don't know what's going to happen in the U.S. With that, Matt, back to you.
Great. Well, thank you for telling me I'm too young. Best news I've had all day. United States is not public. I agree with everything you said. Public sentiment or even public acceptance that's required for construction of new nuclear plants. The polls are mostly national.
The polls? He's the moderator, is he? Oh, I know he's not, but... What was the purpose? This was supposed to be a response to Fukushima, see?
You don't need national to build a reactor with the whole community in a hospital state. And there are lots of places that would be delighted to have a company announce we're going to spend $5 or $6 on construction in your neighborhood. We're going to provide a continued tax source for the next few years, etc. I was up in Maine where they were tearing down the old Maine and the plant that had actual safety problems. The school across the bay, what industrial that site would be put to next, because the news was quiet and they didn't know what was going to happen. You could put in a noisy factory that would make life very difficult at school. In the United States, what plants is not public sentiment, it's the profit motive. And the
Right, they actually got a microphone in the audience that's live, and that helps distort everything. He's only getting half a sentence. Every 3 or 4 words he's cutting off. The moderator's not saying, give us a second, see if we can mitigate that a little bit, or let's call you on the phone. Clearly, this was orchestrated that way.
The problem for nuclear right now to be...
The problem with nuclear right now is chumbing. I would imagine this was set up just to discourage you from watching it in the first
nuclear
place.
waste, not to be Fukushima, not to be other generalized fears. It's not to be natural gas at $3.50 a million BTU. A nuclear plant today is probably the value of the natural gas it saves, plus the value of the carbon it saves. Now,
that's so weird. It's like watching Bruce Lee movie, except having horrifying scumbag actors.
because we're sitting on more natural gas than we thought we were, technology has improved the recovery method. The fracking, which produces lots of natural gas, does in fact have environmental downsides, but it's not clear how much of a hindrance that's going to be. So we've got no price on carbon. We've got no prospect of a price on carbon. We don't need nuclear power for energy independence.
We got no price on carbon. So they were looking to get a carbon tax back then. Wow.
Companies that would do it because they think they can make money at it. At this price, nobody can make money building a new reactor. So we had the 2005 Energy Act set aside 18.
Did you hear that? He said nobody can make money now building a reactor. I was like, woohoo!
$5 billion in loan guarantees. These aren't loans, these are just the government. It's like, I would go in and co-sign a car note for my kid, an $18.5 billion car note. And there were 4 leading candidates. Of the 4, the one in Georgia, they've actually broken ground. That's the Southern company, the Vogtle site. That's the one that may end up with 4 reactors. There's another across the Savannah River in South Carolina where they've broken ground.
Yeah, they went bankrupt. So here he is trying to promote there's more reactors and more coming online and more startups. And we're supposed to be talking about nuclear meltdowns and detonations and explosions and health issues, la la la.
They don't yet have permission to build, but they're building these enormous holes in the ground with good foundations. The 2 others were my pop-up nuclear plant here, which is the Ariba design. There's a company that wanted to build one of these in Calvert County, Maryland, about 50 miles south of the District of Columbia. The French, Ariba itself and Électricité de France were going to be partners, but the local company, Constellation Energy, which used to be Baltimore Gas and Electric, got cold feet. It looked at the price of electricity plunge in the eastern electrical market because we're in a recession, because natural gas is so cheap, and it said we can't make money out of this. The French said, well, we'll just find another partner, but they haven't succeeded in doing that. So there's a loan guarantee that may go begging. The other one is in Texas, the South Texas project, where the company that wants to build was told by the U.S. government it couldn't get a loan guarantee unless it got contracts to pre-sell some of the electricity. The likely buyers, munis, co-ops, etc., were not interested in buying because they didn't think that the project was ever going to happen. The company that wants to build, it's a New Jersey company called NRG, did line up some potential investors. One of them was TEPCO itself. TEPCO was going to take a 10% stake. I don't think TEPCO is in a position to do that anymore. power. That reactor was a shaky prospect before.
And then you got all that background noise from the audience, people moving in their seats, and people move. You can hear their jackets rustling. You really think that Stanford University couldn't have got rid of that, wasn't monitoring it, and couldn't have got him a telephone to get clarity? My goodness, moderator, like if I was a moderator and listening to this, then that, give us a second, folks. We seem to miss a few things here.
The accident, and is a shakier prospect now. So at the moment in the United States, we've got 104 reactors. The TVA is trying to finish off 105th.
The guy talking in the background and the girl are just almost as loud as him.
It started in the early 70s and then let sit in mothballs for years. We've got 3 that are likely to be approved and built. They're in a part of the country where the risk of building the wrong thing will still lie with customers. It's not like California or the Mid-Atlantic states where we have a market system. It's a traditionally regulated system where the customer takes the risk, gets the benefit.
People talking, people coughing, people rustling around in their seats. Hang on a second. I can't remember. Oh, yeah, they do took some questions from the audience. Okay. Well, maybe there's hope yet.
Foresee a lot of other reactors getting built here, but on the other hand, I didn't foresee that before Fukushima. The Chinese have temporary hold on building, but they'll go back to building, and so will the Indians. Foresee a lot of other reactors.
He actually talks about Fukushima. Hang on.
Getting built here, but on the other hand, I didn't foresee that before Fukushima. The Chinese have temporary hold on building, but they'll go back to
Chinese
building, and so will the Indians,
nuclear, right?
because they don't have the coal, as Bert said, and they have a very rapidly growing demand. We do not have rapidly growing demand in this country. In fact, for the last 2 years, it's actually shrunk.
He's gone into zombie mode on us now. And I was like, well, that was my cue. You guys better smarten up and say something. He read his script, right? Now he's like, see that look? That's because he read his script.
And I have no idea.
Oh, God. Can you hear us?
You will in a second. I've got to talk.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm sorry, I know that Lee is speaking, but I don't hear anything.
Oh, can you hear me? Or no?
1 minute, and then you'll hear.
So why don't you start off with a question for me, and then we can do it.
Okay, well, we will, while we're waiting for that to sort out. So when he comes back, we would like him to have the opportunity to wrap up, but then we'll move on to questions. And anyway, how are we doing with the audio up there?
Okay, I hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, so did you have some more remarks that you wanted to make, or are you?
No.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Did you want to waste another 5 or 10 minutes, Matt? No, I done pretty good, didn't I? They're going to get me a job at the Nuclear Energy Institute now? He apparently did. This is what your universities are for. They're there just to screw you. Make sure you can't have a future. Make sure your child gets sick. Make sure your country falls apart. Destroyed your food and your water with radioactive fallout. And then blame you for it because you won't use nuclear.
So we will now, now we'll move on to questions. And so you can ask questions of either speaker, and typically we like to ask the students first, so don't be shy, and Jaya.
Can you imagine how seated this audience is going to be? Here we go. Let me chop that up.
And Noel have got the microphones and can give you those.
All right, who's this random person? I wonder. Give me that.
Any comments from either of you about Diablo Canyon in San Luis Obispo?
Diablo Canyon. Either comment from either one of yous? How's this going to play out?
Diablo Canyon has a safety committee that reports straight to the governor. I talked to the guy who was chairman of that committee. He says that they have higher, Diablo Canyon's up on a cliff. They don't have to worry about tsunamis. Their design basis earthquake is, he says, quite conservative for this area. The San Onofre reactor has a higher seawall than Fukushima does. Its emergency generators are up on a cliff while the reactor itself is low. But all these things are going to be reviewed. And I think that for our reactors in California, the biggest question is how long do they have to stand on their own?
All right, how about right back there?
Can I toss in a...
If he had a puked over his chest that time and nobody even flinched, that would not have surprised me for some reason.
A comment there?
Oh, sure.
The American reactors almost all have big diesel tanks that are underground. Not so much because of fear of tsunami, but because of hurricane surge or cyclone things. And tornado, excuse me, not cyclone. Most of them have a day tank which run the diesel generators for...
Like if I can't understand, I sat here with the headphones on, what's the possibility anybody in the audience understands a freaking thing he says? Everybody burping and farting and talking.
Many hours. The possible change to be made after Fukushima is that they will have yet a larger requirement for diesel, which could be used to run diesel fuel, which could run the diesel generators, could also be running emergency pumps, could be running fire trucks. Some of these places have bought fire trucks to move water around.
Man, we're 3 months down the road. I don't think anybody knows what he's talking about. Look, this is day 4, day 5. It would have looked just like that. You're not going in there. You're not going near it. You're not walking down the road. You're not running down the road. You're not flying over it. It's a nuclear wasteland. And he's talking about diesel could run fire trucks. And once the building's kicked out the reactor cores, 40 years worth of reactor cores all over the place. That's you can't go there. It's a nuclear wasteland. Your organs melt right away, right? It doesn't matter how stoic and heroic or brave you are. Your organs melt.
And they're also likely to go from having either 8 hours or in most cases 4 hours of batteries. You could the 72 hours. Those were.
These reactors weren't running on batteries. Once you ejected everything all over this, well, once the tsunami came through, like, I'm sorry, let me frame this again. So before everything blows up, right, there's the earthquake, there's the tsunami. The tsunami ran through the site. Let me go to that for 1 second. So look at the tsunami running through the site. Here's what the tsunami done everywhere else. That's one. Here's another version. Here's another version. Here's the site itself. Right, tsunami came in. Next one comes in on top of that. Next one, they're at 400 or 500 miles per hour. It rip everything apart. You're not going to turn in any valves. You're not plugging in extension cords. There's nothing functional on the entire site. There's nothing functional. And obstacles are everywhere. It's not like you had a lot of rain, the water ran off the site, and you walked out the door and everything is like it's supposed to be. You had a tsunami run through the site. There's nothing functional.
Be very acceptable. They are the kind of thing that the NRC is looking at now. After the Hurricane Andrew in Florida, the Florida Power and Light reactors, Turkey Point, went for many, many days sufficiently on their own, shut down. Of course, there was no grid to connect to it.
Well, that was somewhere else because they had external power, right? They never had a tsunami run through their sites. You can't conflate two of these.
But they came through with superficial damage and
the batteries have to run 4,500 tons of water a minute, for instance. Like you need two large, massive external gas, oil, or coal, typically coal plants. You need two massive ones dedicated to the site because they're massive sites. Once the tsunami runs through it, let alone even the batteries is a figment of their imaginations anyway. Once the batteries were introduced into the equation, people start saying, well, they were running on batteries for 72 hours. You're like, what are you talking about? And I have no evidence there's batteries there at all. If there is, they're just for insignificant functions. They're not for running an actual 19-story building. Again, just let me remind you, the tsunami ran through the site. Even if you did, like you have 50 transport trucks of batteries sitting there somewhere. Right? It's irrelevant. You had a tsunami run through the site.
no longer lasting damage. And as at Fukushima, devastated, but the reactor was still standing.
I don't know what he said. Look at all the obedient sheep.
Okay,
But
I was wondering if either of you have any estimates for cost increases or time to build increases that could result from regulations that would stem from the accident.
You faded out.
Did you have any comment on cost increase now because you have more safety?
At the end there.
Cost increases or time increases from...
You don't know how to turn the microphone on. You must be a nuclear scientist. This guy.
Is that, okay.
Matthew Wald probably invited them all out for pizzas.
Do either of you have any estimates for cost increases or time increases?
Now look how fast the people on the TriCaster turned his volume down. They're all over it, right? Matthew Wald's volume, couldn't care less.
For
the other volume, like the whole story is absurd anyway. What they do.
Building nuclear power plants that might result from the new regulations, new safety regulations stemming from the accident in Japan.
I don't think it's possible to say anything about that now.
Right, they adjusted his volume in instance.
Now, because the NRC review hasn't been done. What are they going to do? I think at the minimum they're going to require that plants live on their own for a longer time than they do now. The impact on cost of just that is small. The other stuff, we just have to wait and see. Can't tell you. I can say one thing about prices, by the way, that the cost estimates for one of these new plants in the United States is quite a bit higher than the cost estimate, the actual costs for similar plants that have been recently built in Korea and Japan. And one of the reasons for that high cost is that there hasn't been a reactor built in the United States in a very long time. So our infrastructure for building reactors has decayed away. It's going to have to be built up, and that's reflected in the cost estimates for the first round of new nuclear reactors. You got to get past that, and I think Matt is quite right. The big competition now is gas. Gas is so cheap, people are going to go that way first.
I would agree with all of that, but I'd like to add that some of the new designs are intended to allow provision of water, cooling water, without very little electricity. The schematic that Bert tries water reactor is an AP1000. It has about the same amount of water in reserve anyplace else, but it keeps the roof.
Like, whatever the reactors need, you're not going to change that. You're not going to snap your fingers and change what it takes to cool the reactor.
Gravity will still operate no matter what else happens. It has vastly few safety groups and valves because it doesn't need them. It's also set to passively.
And like he just keeps cutting in and out, cutting in and out. So painful, isn't it?
Give off heat so it can't get as hot. General Electric has a similarly passive boiling water reactor, although I don't know if anybody's had to build it. The Ariba design,
Windows XP. It's been a day and a minute since I see that.
My favorite pop-up here has double the number of safety chains, so it requires active systems, but it's like 4 of them.
He should just go blop, 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 blop. Make more sense.
With them, and you only need 1 to operate. So this might raise the price of the reactors, but some of the new reactors on the
sounds like he's promoting small modular reactors for some reason. But because he's so dishonest.
drawing boards are under construction around the world are already intended to bubble.
Thank God.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Did everybody get that?
Let's go back up further. Yeah.
Oh, buddy, he's asleep, for goodness sakes. Oh, wake me up when I'm allowed to go home. I think lots of people.
I'm not a Stanford
lots of people left.
So is it okay if I ask a question?
Still leaving.
The question is actually in 2 parts. With the advent of high-temperature gas-cooled reactors,
there's so much background noise. It's unbelievable, eh?
change the temperature.
It's like they got a microphone pointed at the crowd in Pacific somewhere. And this microphone is live. The old guy's microphones are live. Matthew's microphone is probably all that, static. Just to drive you away. I'm pretty sure that was a technique to use.
And commercial equation on the high end.
I have no idea what he's saying on top of that.
And thermoelectric generators, such as are used in our spacecraft, on the low end.
So he's talking about these small modular type reactors used on spacecraft.
I'd love to take a crack at that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let's get Matthew Wald, non-scientist, non-nuclear expert, non-academic, to answer all the technical questions at Stanford University. The elite of the elite on our planet, the very best, the people that we all turn to when we're looking for answers in times of crisis, is these monkeys and morons.
The advantage of a high-temperature gas-cooled
Look, he's on the big screen. Oh my God. That must have been horrible for the people.
reactor is traditional light water reactors make electricity. Electricity is cheap.
Fukushima, guys. Don't forget Fukushima.
A high-temperature gas-cooled reactor could be envisioned not so much to make electricity as to split molecules. And when you do that, you're substituting for heat. You end up with hydrogen you can run for a fuel cell in a mobile application like a bus or a car.
I apologize. I'm sorry. And the students that screwed that audio up, they're out there now working on TV stations and everywhere else.
You end up with hydrogen that you can add to
Promotion
fossil fuel reserves, heavy oils, and turn them into gasoline fairly cheaply.
Fukushima!
But I wouldn't say at this point we have the advent of high-temperature gas-cooled reactors. What we could play is plans. The best reactor is the one you've never built because you don't know what its complications are. These things never get easier when you actually start bending metal and...
The best reactors are the ones that are never built. Still 8 minutes left?
And constructing, they only get harder. So as projected, the high temperature gas cooled reactors look lovely. The pebble bed is, built one, ran it a few years.
What gas cooled reactors is he talking about, I wonder?
On it. The South Africans seem to love it, defunded it. It now looks like the Chinese may actually build one. The Chinese have money to throw around. But when you get up close and you get into the details, some of these things don't look as good in a hypothetical sense.
I'd like to give a little different answer to that question, because after much prodding, the DOE is finally doing a very sensible thing. I call it analysis in multiple dimensions. If you're talking about the next generation of nuclear reactors, you should be considering the cost to build, the cost to operate, the cost of electricity, safety, sustainability, spent fuel treatment.
How about an application into the regulatory agency? This speculation is still going on today, 14 years later. It's a total speculation. They haven't built one of them anywhere with success, right? None. You have to build them at the national laboratories. You have to have an application into the regulatory agencies. Like, they're so far off what the video was supposed to be about, and the response to Fukushima was everything is better. That's their response, I guess.
And proliferation risk. In this multi-dimensional space, you have to analyze all of the alternatives. And it may be that when you consider them all, it's going to depend on how you balance them. I'll bet you the balance is going to shift more towards safety after Fukushima. But all of these other things, what to do with the spent fuel and proliferation risk, et cetera, are going to come into it too. And if you consider it that broadly, it's not clear which of, I'm going to call them Generation 4 reactor designs is the right way to go. This analysis just started, I think, about 6 months ago. It's got a way to run. When it's done, it's got to be put out for criticism, and then they'll come back, and I think that will give us a better idea of which Generation 4 technology to go with. There are also the small modular reactors.
They still don't exist 14 years later.
Which are touted to have certain advantages over safety, initial capital costs, et cetera. I don't think it's so simple as to just say.
Well, it wasn't like NuScale was going to build them, right? And they had got all these investors, and they raised all this money. They stole everything. They went bankrupt. It never went bankrupt, but they got class action lawsuits against them. They just left the country and got investors from other countries. But ultra-safe nuclear, it actually went bankrupt after it stole all the money for their small modular reactors. They didn't acquire land. They didn't try to get a full application into the regulatory agency. They didn't try to design it, right? The whole process is very. They ended up at the stock market with no product and robbed the investors. Now, it was going to cost, what was the number? Can anybody remember? If you scaled up NuScale small modular reactors to a gigawatt reactor, you were looking at something like $28 billion or something. It was the absolute opposite of being more cheaper. And then they've been at it for 80 years. There's 100 companies, and they still haven't cracked the so-called, all the designs are based on the original designs we were looking at.
A gas-cooled, high-temperature looks like the way.
Like Rolls-Royce is going to be 500 megawatts. There's lots of reactors out there, large ones, that are 500 megawatts. And then calling that a small modular reactor. The Canadian small modular boiling reactor 300 is 24 stories, 250-foot building. It's taller than Fukushima reactors by 50 feet, and they're calling it a small modular reactor. It's simply not. It's not modular, and it's not small.
Way to go. How about this guy down here who's been struggling for...
Thank you so much, Dr. Richter.
Yeah, let's cherry pick a few.
He has the look of a student.
He's only a
Thank
student.
you, Dr. Richter.
If he wants to graduate class this year, he better get the question perfect.
Showed us that wind causes about 1/10 as many deaths as
Wow.
nuclear power. And
Wind causes 1/10 as many. See, nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. So if you're eating that food, there's heart, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia. There's 860,000 extra cancers in the first year in Japan. Not everybody got health care. Not everybody was
showed us that
diagnosed.
wind causes about 1/10 as many deaths as nuclear power. And in the United States, it costs about 1/5 as much. It's
That's not a question. That's a statement. That's that's the teacher's pet.
competitive with coal. It has been competitive with coal since 2005 at 4 to 5 cents per kilowatt hour. And with pumped storage hydro, we know how to balance grid demand, so it doesn't matter when the wind's not blowing. We can use wind power from 1 to 5 in the morning to synthesize fuels for a 45.
I love that question. I love that question.
So the
Because
question,
Like, he started off with nuclear is better because the death toll from wind is much higher than nuclear. What a
all the
disgusting-
premises that you've given are just wrong. The only reason that wind power costs so little is because of massive subsidies. Now, you have to...
Nuclear is nothing but subsidies. All power is just dependent upon subsidies because they stole the original money that was paid in by the ratepayers to rebuild something.
Excuse me, my turn. Massive subsidies. You have to ask the question of what is the total cost. It may be the ratepayer paying part, but the taxpayer paying the rest.
Ratepayer, taxpayer, the same people.
There's an analysis that's been going on in how much wind can you actually incorporate into the electricity mix now.
If you use storage, like water batteries, we have two aquifers and extra energy, you pump water up to a top aquifer. So that's good to go. That's base load power sitting there, right? But another solution is best to use many. A couple of other solutions would be compressed air storage. Because you can buy big, huge windmills that only compress air, and you can dig mine shafts and just fill up your air down there. And then the heat from the compression can be stored in salt or lava rocks or sand for extended periods of time. So when you're going to unpack the compressed air, you have your heat sitting right there. 65-70% efficiency. But there's some really exciting stuff. It's called geothermal. Anything nuclear can do, geothermal can do at least 15 years before nuclear can. And it can do it way better, no adverse side effects. You haven't got to spend $100 million a year on maintenance. You don't have to have iodine pills stashed everywhere in case something breaks down.
In fact, the California Council on Science and Technology, looking at 2050, found that you could not do the goal of greenhouse gas reduction without putting in nuclear.
That's simply not. Nuclear is the most resource intensive in history of any other energy. That everything that goes on that site is triply by 3 different corporations inspected on top of that. It's only the best of the best. Just the cement alone in the latest when they're building in the United Kingdom, there's enough to build a sidewalk to Rome from the United Kingdom. That's how much cement. The site is so big. Have you ever seen pictures of it? It's absurd how big the site is. It's the biggest construction project in history, worldwide. And it's infested with rats chewing through all the wires. So stupidest thing about it.
A problem is we don't have the grid to transmit wind from where it is to where.
Yeah, because the nuclear industry doesn't share the grid. It hates renewables on top of that. Let me show you. I think I got an example here for you. We're getting down there now. I'm starting to get my second wind. That's not a good thing. Yesterday's show was 4 hours, 15 minutes. Today's not going to be near that, thank goodness. We're almost through this one. Let me see. These people are nuts, is the best way to describe them, by the way. And they're rude, they're insane. They're actually insane is the best way to describe them, I think. I thought I had everything sitting right there. Let me see if I can find my... Oh, I guess not. I can't remember. I thought I had it sitting right there. Yeah, here we go. Should be right here somewhere. No. Just one more. Like the nuclear renaissance. Let's try this. I just wanted to point out the industry is not as strong as they're claiming, right? Where did it all go wrong for the French nuclear giant Areva? Which was the government. That was the government. They cancelled one company, changed the name, kept the same office, the same phone number, everything else, just to get rid of the responsibilities to the fuel cycle that they would have had for thousands of years. I haven't been paying attention to the Geiger counter tonight. I got no idea what it was doing. Let me see if I can fix a few things. That's okay. Westinghouse went bankrupt because of the nuclear industry. Energy service giant Woods pulled out of the UK nuclear, so did China. Nuclear and coal lobbies threatened to scuttle renewables in South Africa and did. Canada closed down 700 solar and wind farms in Ontario a couple of years ago because Darlington and Bruce Power wanted $13 billion each to do renovations, and renewables would have got that scuttled. So they closed down 700 plus large solar and wind farms. They were awesome. Keep her going here. Let's see if we can make our way through the rest of it. Ooh, we're down to 5 minutes. We get some good stuff.
A problem is we don't have the grid to transmit wind from where it is to where you'd like it to be.
Because nuclear built their grid so they could only accommodate more nuclear.
And the intermittency is a problem that has to be dealt with. And there is no universally available grid scale storage gigawatt days, not megawatt hours.
Yeah, there was. Of course there was. They just wouldn't build them. Geothermal has been around for thousands of years. But its ability to be as good as any other source out there has been scuppered by the industry, right?
You can talk about pumped storage, it's good, but you got to have a lake, and you got to have water, and you don't have that all over the.
You can build your own, right? You build two big aquifers, and you just keep circulating the water. Why take it constantly out of a pond or an ocean when you can build your own
place? So I think I'm a fan of wind, believe me. But looking hard at wind, you might be able to do 10 or 15% of our electricity by.
You can do it all with geothermal, right? And then back it up with solar and wind.
2020. And you should also know that Germany has just forbidden the addition of any more wind because they can't keep the grid stable with
Yeah, because at that time they had nuclear power plants.
the anything
Don't
more
have
than
that
they
no
have
more.
now. So anyway.
Dishonest.
Okay, I'd like to get back to the nuclear topic. This will be our
Yeah, that'd be great. What kind of spin are they going to pump it?
last question, and up there in
The very last
the audience,
question.
right? Yeah, this
Ask
is,
a tough one to Matt, please.
Hi, I am interested with most of the modern nuclear plants being built in the developing world. Do you think the regulatory and quality control measures in place are
I want to get back to nuclear. Not Fukushima, but promote nuclear.
sufficient enough to, in those countries, to prevent?
That was so low. That's such a low thing they done on that whole.
Greater disasters of greater magnitude. Thank you.
Still got a
I
ways to
can
go
give you
yet.
a personal opinion. I think that is something to worry about. I think that one of the biggest problems is the
Is
regulators.
Is this
And
guy.
the International Atomic Energy Agency has a program aimed at training regulators.
The International Atomic Energy Agency is UN. They have IRPA and ONSCAR and the IPRC. International Atomic Energy Agency is one of many. They don't have any sovereignty over any country. They're not regulators or regulatory agency in any shape or form. They can't penalize you. They can't force you to stop doing something. They have no authority. They shouldn't exist. They're part of the League of Nations, which is now called United Nations, which is 195 militaries. That guy right there, man. He should be in jail for the rest of his life.
For developing.
And imagine what the students that went through his classes should get their money back and have to be recertified. But imagine how evil they're going to turn out because they had this creature teaching them.
Countries. It's a serious issue. I think that it's got to be further addressed, and it's worth worrying about. Matt?
Matt.
I didn't quite hear the question. I heard some quality control. The problem.
Why have they got Matt there? He's the least qualified person in that building is Matt.
Fukushima wasn't quality control, it was design.
Fukushima wasn't quality control, it was a design.
No, Matt, the question is about developing work.
So you got that previous so-called professor's super loud audio. You got Matt, who looks like he's possessed by a demon there.
World countries getting into the.
Look at the picture of Matt. With his eyes rolled. Did they freeze the frame just for kicks as students? Or was that just... I can't look at it. Mommy, that man scares me.
Nuclear business. Do they have regulating infrastructure? Is corruption a problem? Are they going to obey the rules? Is it more dangerous there?
Well, I was out in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania a month ago talking to Westinghouse, which is fabricating parts now for AP1000s being built in China and hoping to sell them around the world. Supposed to get final design approval from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission later this year. Bert, you mentioned this before.
Get every third or fourth word. Stop whining, Dana. I know. Still got 2 minutes to go.
When they export the components for the reactor, there's an intangible they're exporting there, and one NRC seal of approval.
I won't touch nothing.
It is possible to take well-designed Western products, a Boeing 737, and fly it into the ground. You have good local operators. I think the airline is pretty good. If you look, for example, at the Middle East,
I had a dog named Spot.
there that are flying European or American built.
He he's trying not to say it, but I think he wanted to say I had a dog named Spot, and he used to eat all my cornflakes, and I would eat his dog food, and that's why we were best of besties.
Using European or American crews, it's like a pickup basketball team where nobody is local.
He's the kind of like wherever he's to, he got his own lunchroom. No, just for you. It's a nice chair, some calm music there. I got your psychiatrist.
If they're good, they will select competent people from the outside. They don't have the native experience, and they're never going to. There's an old Greenpeace accident anywhere. It's a nuclear accident every, and he was adopted that. They do that. Even
I think what he said was which translates to woo. And a 1 and 2.
In the United States, the very strong effort by the new
55 seconds.
To look at each other.
You can hear the audience trying to get out of there.
There's best practices, look at each other's problems. The World Association of
Oh, did you hear that lady yawned?
Nuclear Operators tries to do that. The IAEA tries to do that internationally, not quite successfully. One hopes that.
Did he just say he pooped his pants? But it's okay, because his doggy's going to eat his cornflakes?
Countries building these things without any infrastructure will rely heavily on other that are.
Okay, well, thank you. So this is
Yeah, thanks for zooming in on that camera guy.
certainly a topic that we're all going to keep thinking about and learning more about as the rest of this story
And look at an evil, wicked human that creature right there is.
unfolds. So I want to thank our speakers for giving us really fantastic.
So we're going to get 10 seconds. I want to thank our speakers for giving us a fantastic...
For more, please visit us at stanford.edu.
Yeah, I'll get right on that. First, I'd like to apologize to everybody. Put you through that. Gene Attaway donated 100 last night. Bless your heart. I got two. I ordered in this kit today. I got a really good deal on it. 200 and all I got was $235 or something like that. So I got 12 ball joints. I got to change them because I get my truck goes makes that squeaky noise, and that's usually the boots on one of your ball joints. Not like me with multiple. One of your ball joints has gone dry on you, right? So I was trying to figure it out today because we actually had sunshine. First time we've seen it since last year, since the the beginning of winter, basically. And I said, well, I'll go out and tool around the best I can. I'm not very good shape. I'm back to the hospital on Friday, which I should have thought of it, but anyway. So I was supposed to pick up the upper control arm, which is what you're looking at. There's two of them. I was like, wow. And I get all the tie rods and everything else, because the boots are dried on them. And I was out there today, and I got a needle for my grease gun, right? So poke a hole, or if there's already a hole there, and pump in a bunch of grease, right? Just to try to salvage them for a bit longer. I got sick of doing it today because there was so much damage. And we put our truck to hell with Fukushima research expeditions over the years. And so it's not a big deal. For $212, I can change almost all of them. So I ordered that in instead of windshield wipers for the back. I think I get 2. I'm not sure. Yeah, pack of 2. Because my back window's a 10-inch windshield wiper. So I got to get this. I got to get 2 of them, but I can get away with 1. Eventually I'll have to replace the other one. I can't do the wheel alignment until I replace both of them, right? Which is... They're not too bad price, but they are expensive compared to the other stuff. And if I'm gonna do that, I might as well change the sway bar bushings. $23, pretty good, eh? You got to get that gadget in order to get the lower control arm off, which are different, right? They're different. And then I got to get a ball joint press. So I'm going to do this in chunks, right, over the next little while and get each piece. But that's the whole shit and shaboodle you got to put together to change all of the ball joints. I should be good for a lot of years after that. But I mean, look at this. Look at the bang for your dollar here. Because the top upper control arms are different. They got the ball joints too, right? See the difference? I went out there twice today. The first time I didn't realize it was actually different. I thought I was going to get away with... Because you can actually buy 4 of them for like $140 or something. The upper control arms. I thought that I was going to get away with that, right? But no. No, I haven't. My Hummer H3 is a nice one, so I got that guy. And the cheapest ones I can find was $200 for each of them. So that's my next project. I got the boat there, the small boat today. I moved the trailer out of the way so I can get some work done. And then, like, once I got underneath the vehicle, because I can hear the squeaking, you can hear this clanking. And so once I jacked up on a few of the ball joints, they're really loose. Might as well, for that price, I can change all of them except for 2. So I have a whole new front end, right? And it's $60 for a front end alignment or something. So... if you got your tools, you can do it yourself too. I'll just take my time over 2 or 3 days and I'll do that when the weather is appropriate. 865,000 extra cancers. But don't tell Walt, or Matt, rather. Don't tell Matt or Burton Richter. What a horrible creature, Stanford University. What a dirty trick Stanford University done to everybody. What a rotten betrayal. Now, it's like this is the media pretending they're on top of Reactor 4. So it's not just one journalist, Matthew Wald. The whole system is sickening, demented, and sadistically twisted and evil. Like what they're doing is sinister, right? It's terrorism. It's detestable. It's diabolical. And it's the end of the shoe. You have no choice now but to give it up. I'm talking about they do repairs to my truck, yeah. So if people can donate, that'll be appreciated. If you can't, make sure you give us a like and a share. Let me see what else we got here to do tonight. Well, I screwed up the original song tonight that I wanted to play. I'm going to play that again, but James has produced 2 completely dedicated videos to the ocean. And the best way to describe him is his art. And he's got over 300 songs. Right, he's got over 300 anti-nuclear songs on his site now that he created. And the White Orpha Orca Prophecy was about. You'll find a story linked below that. Please go over and give these some views. Give them a subscribe. Give them some thumbs up and share. That's a quick way to share these videos, right? If you got kids, consider downloading a lot of this music. I was trying to produce, and I did a couple of runs on taking a bunch of these songs and making a music video type of, 40 of these songs, say. And so I got to do some more tweaking before I want to see if we can get that out there, because that's a lot of great music. And you start getting the younger generation listening to this stuff and getting educated. We're going to play Enrichment Man, but I only because I really, really like this song. I love this song here, Red Tide Slide, and I love this white orca prophecy about a white orca in Japan. It's based on a true story. But because I screwed up the original song tonight, we're going to come and close the poll down after. Did Stanford conceal the severity of the Fukushima nuclear meltdown to protect the university's interest? And we got 22 likes. Well, we've done pretty good tonight. And here we go with the song. See everybody tomorrow night. There's links in the bottom of my description if you never donated before and you feel like it. The best way is through PayPal. You can do credit cards. You don't need a PayPal account. You can do bank cards through PayPal. You don't need a credit card. And help me order in that stuff, because if you try to buy the stuff from the dealership, a couple of $1,000, so it's dirt cheap, right, to do it this way. And I'm going to try to adjust the volume on my side. You have a great night. Hugs for everybody. I'm sorry I done 3 of these videos in a row. Tomorrow night will be a normal news cycle show. It's going to be really good. Make sure you find your way here. Have a great night.
You said the world needs power. I won't disagree. There's heat in the ground and the wind runs free. You call nuclear the future, but it won't power itself. Nuclear relies on coal more than coal needs itself. You said crypto was coming and demand would explode, that AI would load what the grid couldn't hold. But SMRs stay delayed, no ground ever breaks, and the public pays out while the promise remakes. You said it's the hour, but the plan's still the same. The technology is analog from the Cold War days. There's no place for the waste, and yuccas refused. Vented dry cast containers become the only refuge. You say you lead the charge with a federal hand. Would you vote Price Anderson or stand with the land? You call it advanced, but the cycle's well known, still chasing a fuel that should have stayed in the stone. They brought in the waste with no warning or word. No records were filed and no voices were heard. The workers got sick, yet their claims were denied. But their jobs paid well, or so at the time. Say the same line again, just a little more vague. Let the Holocaust wash away while the lobbyists wave. It's the same old plan with a new name again. And the public keeps paying again and again. The words that you sign will be printed and praised with a ribbon and stamp on a speech full of praise. This is abundance, they'll claim as they lead. But nuclear won't build what the future will need.